AfriBlocks Freelancer Summit 2022. A round of applause for Jamaica.
What I like about AfriBlocks is, we're building what we want. So we speak Shona when we want. We have our branding. If you look at everything that we do, it's Pan-African, it's African because that's who we are. And for me, it has been too long that we see people that don't look like us in those positions, in the decision-making positions. If you get a startup that has raised $200 million, and all they have is a website. I know a startup that raised $5 million out of an idea. There was an idea, and they said, okay, I'm thinking of doing this, and they raised $5 million. And the only reason was because they were not black. They were white guys from Stanford, from Harvard, and people always say we are the same, but we're not. And for us, that's what we want to address. We want to place ourselves in a position where we make the decision and build for ourselves. Anyway, I digress. My name is Yacho. I'm the co-founder of AfriBlocks. We are a local Pan-African freelancers marketplace. And what we do is we seek talent from across the continent, be it designers, marketers, developers, and connect them with remote jobs across the world, and mainly from the USA, the UK, and Canada. And I'm going to tell you how all this started. So I graduated in 2015 from the University of Zimbabwe, did computer science and maths. And when I was trying to figure out, okay, what's my next step? Because you're so happy you graduated, you're throwing the cap all over, and you're like, okay, wait, now things are starting to get real. So what am I going to do? And I heard about this event that was going on, that was a blockchain event. So at that time we came out of Harare, which transport and everything. The event started at 9, but one of my friends said you should go. Like, 9 I should probably be way home because the event started at 9, it's probably 11, 12. But anyway, I did go, and I met a guy, his name is Sinclair Skinner, who was a Pan-African based in the States, and what he talked about that day was Bitcoin, and it was 2015. And me being a software developer, I was really, really interested, like, okay, what is this? And I remember that day going back home, the whole time I was on my phone, Googling, reading, what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain, because to me it was so amazing that you can send money to someone without going through a bank. And then that night I actually inboxed him. I sent him an email that night before I got home, like, okay, I'm interested in working on this. Then fast forward, we built a startup called Bitmari. So some of you may know it, some of you may not, but we are actually one of the first, we're actually the first startup to get a license from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to transfer money using Bitcoin explicitly. And that was one of the first people, when people were still trying to figure out, that time Bitcoin was $200. And I did not buy for some reason. It was $200, and I still thought, okay, $200 for one thing, that's too much. I didn't buy it. But right now it's 36K something, using today's rate. But as I was working between Zimbabwe, Silicon Valley, Washington DC, promoting their product, as soon as you mentioned that you're a software developer, the next question is, I'm actually looking for one. Or my friend is this project they're working on, and can you help me out? But of course, due to time and everything, I wasn't able to take on that many projects. But then I remembered one of my friends who really helped me in school, because I hated Java, and he was really good with Java. And his nickname was Android. because it was that good in developing Android. And I'm like, okay, I have all these people that ask me, can we have a developer, can we do Swift? That time it was Objective-C for iOS. Like, okay, why not just connect these two people instead of me trying to do everything? So I connected them, we got the first job done. Then the other guy wanted translations from English to Shona, to Ndebele, to Zulu. Then I gave my brothers who were all like, guys, you're not doing anything, so you might as well take this job. And it started to grow. Then I'm like, okay, let me create a WhatsApp group so that every time, I get something, I just post in the group. So it was literally like 6 or 7 people, and they started to say, can you add, my friend, can you add this, can you add that? And eventually, the group scored more than 600 people in a space of about 3 months. That's when I was like, okay, there's something here. Because for me, seeing someone being able to say, hey bro, hey, I was able to pay my bills this month because of that translation job I did for 3 hours that other day. So that impact to me was something that really drove me to say, okay, I have a great job. It was a great job. I was traveling all over the place. I've been to about 28 states in the United States, Kenya. I've been to Spain. At the other time, I literally was by the Real Madrid bus, and I'm not really a soccer person, but I could see, why people really like football. But all of that, I say to mean that was not as important as what we're building right now. So my former boss, I know he was disappointed, but now he was super supportive because he also understood that, there comes a time where you say, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to build. And he was super supportive. Fast forward, we started AfriBlocks, and it was just before COVID. It was March, that's when I left my other job, and I was scared because now, I literally went to a great job to zero, because I'm now saying I'm now a freelancer. And yeah, it was a crazy time, but I had a few savings again from that Bitcoin that I put into this thing. Let's start this, let's see how it goes. And I would say, looking back now, it was one of the greatest decisions I made in my life, because I took a leap, even though everything else was not looking good. Because I know my family, they're kind of supportive, but you can see their faces like, what are you doing? But anyways, we started AfriBlocks in March, and then I reached out to one of the person, Roger Roman, who's my co-founder, like, hey, this is what I'm building. And he said, yeah, let's work together. Then in around July, we applied for TaxLab. I applied for the first accelerator, was called, I think it was called Nkomo, Transparent Collectives in LA. We applied for that. We qualified, we went through the program, but that one was not monetary. They will show you how to pitch your company, they'll show you how to call it an elevator pitch, describe your company in one-liner. Because what they say, you should be able to talk or say what your company does in one line. Because you're going to meet that person who doesn't have the time to listen to you, try to figure out the way of what your company does. So there's one-liner, there's an elevator pitch, which is like 1.5 minutes. Then there's 3 minutes, and there's 5 minutes, depending on the scenario. So they were teaching us all that. And while we were pitching, that's when we met Isaac Carter, who's managing director for TechStars. And he liked the business model that we were building. He invited us to apply to TechStars Seattle. So we applied. The process was not easy. It was, I think we went through like 6 interviews, and literally they get at least 1,500 applications. And what they want is 10 startups, 10 out of 1,500. So we went through the first one. Actually, you apply, and if you don't get a response the first time, then that means you're out of the race. So we applied, and we got a response to come to a meeting. we went to that meeting, and the meeting, I remember it was like 2 a.m. because of the time zone, because Seattle is 9 hours behind. So that day, it was better for me to not sleep until 2, because if I slept, I didn't trust myself to wake up. But we had that meeting, and we qualified for the next interview. Then the other interviews, you actually pitch to a group of people, investors and leaders in the space, who then judge and then say, okay, these guys can proceed. So after all that, we qualified to get into Techstars. So why Techstars is important, and why I mentioned it is because it's one of the largest investors and accelerators in the world. And it made AfriBlocks the first startup in Zimbabwe to be accepted into the program. So I mentioned that to say everything that we're building is bigger than us, because that history is already written. Like, I cannot go back and change that. It's already there. When people look and say, what startups have got investment from the largest, I don't know, whatever you search on Google in Zimbabwe, you see AfriBlocks is there, because what we're building is that important. So we do these events to try to keep building that narrative, to try to keep telling our story. And all those interviews we went in, my one-liner was, AfriBlocks is a Pan-African freelancers talent marketplace. That was my one line. And the first 2 words are Pan-African. So if you don't believe in that, then you're probably not going to invest in us. And I'm okay with that. Because what we're building is bigger than us. We want to get to a point where people that come after us are not scared to say Pan-African. Because there was literally, for example, there was an airline called Pan-American. And that's fine. But when you say Pan-African, now people are like, why not just say African, or why not just not use it at all? And for us, it's like, that's not right. So anyway, going back to the story, AfriBlocks, Techstars, we applied, and then the next year we applied to Google for startups. So there's Google for startups, which is almost like an accelerator tool. So we got into that. That one you just get your assistance, and you get access to a community of other founders and things like that. Then we also applied to Google Black Founders Fund, which supports Black entrepreneurs across the globe. And that one is a non-dilutive fund. So what that means is they don't take any equity in your company. They just give you these funds to build, and from that we got access to 100,000 USD. And for Techstars, we got 120,000. So those amounts for what we're trying to build are not that much. Right now we're still raising, we want to raise at least 1.6 million as part of our seed round, because we're taking these amounts as part of our pre-seed. And when you want to build something that serves the whole continent of Africa, 250,000 is like a drop in the ocean. It's great, it's helpful, it allows us to be able to have a mic at this event, to be able to have pictures and everything. And right now our developers are developing the new platform that's about to come out, because another part of building is what we have right now is literally a WordPress site. And that's okay. That was okay. But now we needed to have our own platform, our own proprietary technology platform where we build everything from scratch. Because for those who know WordPress, you cannot scale on that. But it allowed us to prove our thesis, it allowed us to prove our business model, it allowed us to say, does this work at all? And to date, I think we just surpassed about 250,000 in revenue. Again, that's not a lot compared to what I always tell people, like, I don't want to build, or we don't want to build an okay business. We want to build a great unicorn. If it's the first unicorn to come out of Zimbabwe, it's going to be us. So I say that to mean we're not going to limit ourselves at all. We're not going, of course we appreciate the wins, but where we want to get is probably like 100 times more than where we are right now. And I do appreciate everyone coming through to talk about AfriBlocks, to talk about freelancing, to talk about the future of work in Africa and beyond, and to talk about what we are building, what Ramai is building, who's our next speaker, what everyone else in the room is building, because these communities are the ones that allow us to help each other. Because, like I mentioned, if it wasn't for that first meeting, that Bitcoin blockchain meeting I went to, my path would have probably been different. But I went there at 9 p.m. and I remember that day I got, because we stayed in Yacho, which is a long way from here. So around 9, that's where transportation starts to be weird. And that meeting we finished at 12 a.m. Then it was a rapid hours. I walked from there to come to Holiday Inn to wait for transport that I knew was not there. And then I waited for like, I think 30 to 40 minutes, luckily some truck came and I was literally at the back of the truck and on my phone and this tiny weird phone, reading about blockchain. And by the time I got home, I sent a message to the guy like, okay, I'm interested in working in this. And I think that day I felt like I just placed my head on the pillow and I had to wake up again to work. But I say that to mean, even though these opportunities are out there, you actually have to go get them. It's not enough to just say, I'm an entrepreneur and things have to come, they were not. Because for us to get into all those things, I literally was counting how many emails I sent out to investors, and there were 622 emails. And from 622 emails, I think about 50 responses that ended up being 10, and that ended up being about 5 meetings. 642 meetings, 642 emails that I sent out to investors, like this is what we're doing. So I made that point to say we have to work hard to get to where we need to be. But again, thank you for coming. I see, very soon it's going to be a full house, and like Faith mentioned, apologies for starting a bit late. But from now on, I'm going to leave the floor to our amazing speakers, our amazing supporters. We do not take it lightly for you to take time out of your schedules, your busy schedules, your businesses to come to support what we are building. So again, thank you so much. And the next, I'm going to introduce my brother, Ramai. He's from Styra, Yacho. You will explain more what Styra does, because I don't want to just sell it short. Ramai.
Thank you so much, Tongai. You inspired me. I couldn't stop listening to you, and as I was listening, I was really, trying to find how best I can, roll out my note. And I'm a creative, so before I start, we're going to do something that I hope is very creative. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. We all stand up. And we're going to take a selfie. So each and every single person is going to take a selfie. But you have to make sure that there's many people that are in your selfie. So it's a multi-dimensional selfie. So you can turn, if you have to get up on the stage, you can come up on the stage, do whatever you have to do to make sure that there's many people who are in your selfie. Don't forget to tag AfriBlocks. It's at AfriBlocks, right? I'm sure on Twitter, Instagram. Also tag Styra Yacho. It's Styra Yacho. So STYRAYACHO. So yeah. So selfie time. Guys, we need movement, guys. We need movement. Everyone is stuck in their role. Like literally. Okay, so let me move. Let me move. Here's my selfie. All right. All right, thank you. If you've taken a selfie, you can take a seat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to try not to make this Preaching, you know, the pulpit really scares me. I don't know if the presentation is up here. Okay, so we can move over to slide number 2. So I'm going to spend a lot of my time speaking about what I do, what I love, what I'm passionate about. And yes, my name is Uramai. It's a female name, but I think that's where the being different started. You know, I knew I had to be different because of my name. And then I'll jump over to, I was also born with 11 fingers. So again, that makes me very different. How many people in here were born with 11 fingers? Yeah, there you go. So yeah, next slide, yeah. So I started Yacho in 2008. And I'm really happy to be here. Tongai, once again, thank you so much for having me. Brother, this is such a big honor to be standing in front of all these amazing young people. I started Yacho in 2008. And it's a very funny story, hey? Me and my friend, we started together and we were so broke, we couldn't afford, back then there was Fubu, Sean John and whatnot, and we couldn't afford those brands. But we thought to ourselves, okay, we can't afford these brands. Can't we create our own brand that we are proud of? Because we also thought, you know, even if you buy Sean John, there's a type of gait you have to walk with, there's a type of way that you have to talk and act and whatnot. I'm not saying if you've got money, then, you know, you've lost your culture. But we felt, what if we have our own thing? And that's essentially what Tongai was talking about. He's traveled so far, he's seen so much, and you get to a point where everything else that you're seeing that's beautiful, that's amazing, is not ours. It's not African, it doesn't belong to us. And so that really was the idea behind Styra. So we sought to define what style meant to us, but more so how entrepreneurship can be defined authentically by our own ethnicity and backdrop. So the idea is, if you're going to start a business, how can that business be inspired by your background, by who you are, where you come from, and what you do? My mouth is drying up in time, so if there's water. So, yeah, that's when we started Styra. Next slide. So, when we started Styra, and I have to be honest, I don't say this much. We actually started it off with 2 brands, and it was a clothing brand. The other one was called, it had an English name, I've forgotten the name, and with Styra. But when we really started being intentional about Styra, we wanted it to mean something in Southern Africa. So if you say Styra, and we did do our research, if you say Styra in any Southern African country, they understand that you mean style. So go to South Africa, you say Styra, Styra. If you go to Namibia, to Botswana, wherever you go, if you say Styra, it means style. So that's how we were positioning ourselves as a Southern African country. And then if you say Yacho, in most Bantu languages, they understand that it means yours. So he did say Yako, which is totally fine. But most in Swahili, that's how it's pronounced, Yako. And every other Southern African, every other Bantu speaking language, Yako means yours. So essentially we're saying your style. Styra actually means your style. So it was a brand that allowed you to present yourself in your own way, in your own style, in your own representation. And we didn't realize it then, but essentially that was a branding process. That was a branding process where you're understanding how can you cater for your audiences. So our call to action is for intentional communications, collaboration, innovation, and declaring our brand's promise of us Africans owning our style. Essentially what Tongai did when he went wherever he went to is he had to get to a point where he had to own his own style. Whatever he's starting, AfriBlocks, whatever engines he's driving, the support that he's giving, that is all to own your style. So that's really the background around Styra. So what do we do? Our strategy is to passionately help brands express their long-term goal and their authentic African expression. I also did have the same experience as Tongai, where I went to the States on a work working program, and I had the privilege of getting into the NBC studios. And they've got this huge, amazing building. You've been there, right? Oh, okay. I saw you nodding your head. I was like, he's been there. And this building was built, I think, 100 years ago. And it still stands. And what that founder projected 100 years ago is what they're living out today. Now, for me, I saw that and it was inspiring, but I told myself, I have to go back to Africa, I have to go back to Zimbabwe, and I have to make brands look beyond just 20 years. You know, a lot of us grew up with Bata, with Mazoe, I'm glad he's still around. But how many brands did we grow up with that have sort of faded out? And that's what we really need to do as we create our brands with our startups, is how can we ensure that they are sustainable? I'd actually move to the next slide, yeah. I think you skipped a couple of slides, yeah. Yeah, but I'd actually finished that one, yeah. So, why is brand expression important? Why is it important for you to understand your brand, to understand where your brand comes from, to understand the background of your brand? It's because it makes it authentic. And that's our one-liner. When you tweet that picture, make sure you put your one-liner that represents your brand. Ours is authentic African expression. That's all we're trying to do. If you're a tech company and we're helping you with your brand strategy, we're helping you to have authentic African expression. And one of the other things that we did is we partnered with an organization in Tanzania, and this was very strategic because, you know, that's where the mother language, Swahili, comes from, the most spoken language in Africa. And this language solution company helps us, especially when we do our brand strategies for startups, for businesses, to ensure that they can include local languages into their communication. And I think it's very important because we get so used to speaking in English. I'm glad you spoke in Shona when you got up here, that we forget that our own languages are as important as English. So brand expression is very important because it's by the means which we connect with our customers. And language goes beyond just, you know, spoken language. It's all about your body language, you know, how you think, how you act, the steps that you take to achieve what you need to achieve. That is the best way for you to connect with your audiences. And my presentation really is around, you know, tech. If you move to the next slide, is also around how we can leverage on tech and digital platforms for us to connect with our customers. 64% of internet users say 24-hour service is the best feature of chatbots. I would definitely couple that with authenticity, with that originality of your brand, to ensure that that 24-hour service understands the needs of your customer. If somebody's coming to you requesting a need, how best can they be understood? Chatbots will eventually innovate the customer experience and the customer journey, as we know. That's another tool that we could get into. But I'd like to highlight that also as Africans, let us also not see technology as something that we need to ride on. That is an innovation that came up from other nations who took time to self-assess themselves, to see where they're coming from and where they're going to. We can disrupt what is right now. We can change the norm by being very intentional and going for the long run sustainability. So, you can move to the next slide, thank you. So why is it important to have a strategy and to leverage technology? I think it's very important because it provides that memorable experience. Now, as many banks, as many organizations can load up chatbots, can help you be efficient. They can even get those services from different people, but a chatbot can just be a chatbot. If a chatbot has got a very strong strategy, that chatbot is going to, again, make sure that that experience is going to be memorable, emotionally charged, and efficient for the customer journey. And again, it goes back to strategy. You know, technology is not just something that we're jumping onto because it's big across the globe. We have to jump on it, or we have to leverage on it because it meets our need as brands. So why should brands value technology and strategy? And why should brands value innovation? I think having a value system, that's one of the key things within a brand strategy. And that really helps us to have that authenticity that I mentioned. It's also for collaboration. Tech has helped us to collaborate a lot more and a lot faster than we used to. It also helps us to look into the future. With our own selves in mind, thinking of where we want to go, what we want to achieve. I left out a bit about my background. I work at Highlight Foundation. And one of the key things that we always ask before we start on a project, and this is something that I apply in brand strategy, is what is your success picture? What does success look like for you? Within 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, how does success look like? Is it people walking into a building and knowing that you planted this seed 100 years ago, and this has all come into fruition? For us, we value vibrancy, we value style, we value self-expression, authentic self-expression, we value culture, and we also value Africa. So it's really important for us to have a value system, to value innovation. And lastly, as I close off, once we've done this, once we've leveraged on technology, we've leveraged on innovation, we've got a good brand strategy, we know where we're coming from, we know our culture, our backdrop, and we know what success looks like. This builds our brand equity. According to Forbes, some of the biggest companies that have weathered the COVID pandemic, there are companies that have weathered the COVID pandemic, and it's because these brands had the right strategies. They leveraged on technology, and they also had a value system that included their customers. So brand equity is just the value of your brand. And also according to Forbes, those same top 10 brands, they actually include their brand equity on their financial statements. So that means just the fact that this brand is appreciated more than anything else, they can align that as a financial line item. So if you look at Starbucks, and I'm going to talk about local brands, but if you look at Starbucks as Apple, some people buy that product not because it does the job, but because of the perception that they have about that brand. And so that brand equity is what we want to build within our startups. How can we look forward? How can we look beyond just the immediate, your short-term, your medium-term goals? How can you achieve that? And again, all this enhances your customers' experience and journey. So with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. I was told that there are questions that I would be able to take, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got to learn something from Styra, Yacho, a brand that I'm very passionate about, that I've been building since 2008, and hopefully you can get to experience that and to have some discussions with some of you around your own brands. Yeah, thank you.
Oh wow, I know that truly I'm inspired to be part of, people that are creating things for themselves and for all of us. And I hope that all of you are also inspired that one day you will tell us your story. Because guys, I didn't know. So yeah, it's very encouraging to hear about how people are starting and how the journey is going. And I know it's not always easy. And I am happy while I'm here that I am seeing more faces for the ladies. Thank you guys for coming. There's more ladies here. When we started, I think it was more men. So yeah, it's good to see you guys here. So just the other day, I had to change the bulb at the house. Then I went out, they are doing women in engineering. So guys, we must own what we do. hashtag. So it doesn't matter where you start, just do something. When we're talking about your hashtag, women in tech teaching. So I know when I change kind of screen to my phone, it's women in tech or something. So the idea is to just own what you're doing and just feel proud about it. So it may sound like a small idea, but you just never know. Okay, so up next we have a panel discussion, and I will call upon my colleague Kudzai Zawe to introduce the guests and also lead that panel. So let us give it up for Kudzai. Also, I'm sorry, I should have said this before we started. What did they say? Housekeeping, right? Sorry. So, our restrooms, I think the gents, while you go to the reception, so by the lift, there is a corridor to the lift. So, a flight up is where there's the gents, and then the flight down, it says ladies, but it says it's out of order. So, we are gonna have to make it clear. So the ladies one, we need to go another flight down. So it will be, yeah, so 2 flights down. It still says gents, but it's the ladies. Okay, so I'll give it up to Kudzai to introduce the guests for the panel.
Hi guys. I just want to say welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate you taking your time to come and be with us today. So I'm going to call Mikey and Valentine to join me on stage. If you can have Mikey give the other colleagues mic, I can join me on the other side still fine. Okay, so the topic for this panel discussion, we're going to be talking about navigating changing financial systems in a global economy. All right. So I'm here with Mikey. Mikey is a private wealth manager, one of the youngest on the continent, one of the fastest growing wealth management brands called Carry Growth, right? Right?
Yeah, yes. Not on the continent, but in the company.
Yes. So she's a private wealth manager. She deals with individuals of high net worth. So she's going to be giving us some insights on how finances are moving on the continent and stuff. Valentine here is the editor for TechZim. I'm sure we all know what TechZim is, but for those who might not know, it's an online publication that deals with tech and business. So they have a lot of information about startups and how everything is going on the continent and all that. So this is the panel, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So I'm just going to give you guys a bit of background before I start talking to these guys. So you find that we now live in our economies are now more global than local, right? We are dealing with, like what Tonga was saying, connecting brands from all over the world, as far as the United States, as far as Europe, connecting them to African brands, as far as Asia, and etc. So with the global economy, our financial systems are also changing. The way money moves, where money is moving into, all of those things have changed over time. And as part of the future of work, we need to be equipped, right, to understand how the money is moving. Enables us to know where we need to go. It enables us to better prepare for everything that we want to do on our personal brands and whatever brands we work for or work with. So to start off, I'm gonna give this one to Mikey, right? I'm gonna ask him the first question. I just want you to give us a bit of insight into how money is moving around the continent. Where are people making into their investments, and why are they making investments in those particular fields?
All right, can you hear me? Okay, that works. So despite the difficulties that we've faced due to the pandemic that's literally caused turmoil on the continent for the past 2 years, there's actually been a lot of optimism for the venture capital market in Africa as a whole. So obviously on the backdrop of the pandemic, the whole world is pretty much reeling from this. And even in 2020, the outlook for the continent wasn't looking too great. I mean, the GDP forecast was in the red. It was for sub-Saharan Africa. It was predicted to shrink by 1.6%. But despite all of this happening, we got to a point where a lot of tech startups and just startups in general received a lot of funding in terms of investments. So in 2019, in Africa alone, I think it actually tapped into the $1 billion mark in terms of the amount of funds that came from venture capitalists, and in 2021, it actually hit the $2 billion mark. So on the continent in general, the tech startups have been on the boom. But primarily, when you look at the sector specifically, you see a lot of investment going into the health sector, predominantly because of the COVID pandemic. So a lot of money has been going into the healthcare sectors of a lot of African countries, especially in a continent where healthcare is pretty much restricted. And if you look at what these startups are doing, they're not really reinventing the wheel. They're just providing solutions to the peculiarities of the African situation. So I can give you the example of Helium Health. It's a Nigerian startup. And what they simply did was provide a solution to the registration system in hospitals. So if you didn't know, in Africa, I think 30% of hospital visits are actually recorded. Those are the ones that we have on record. So what they did is provide a solution to that, an online solution that, despite your computer literacy or your computer skills, wherever you were on the continent, you'd be able to use this app and record, the hospital visits and the patient's details and things like that. There has been quite a surge in the healthcare system. Prior to COVID, it only took about 9% of all the investment funds that actually came onto the continent, relative to things such as fintech, which is pretty much a powerhouse. But despite the amount of money that is going into healthcare, I think fintech companies are also receiving a lot of money in terms of investments. And I think in the past year, the amount of money invested into fintech startups has literally gone up by 50%. That's 50%, I think it was from 1.3 billion. So 50% of 1.3 billion, that went up to a chunk of the 2 billion from last year. So a lot of money has predominantly been going into healthcare and fintech, but there's been a growth in interest in the healthcare sector, predominantly because of the COVID pandemic. Yeah.
Okay, and Valentine, she mentioned the healthcare sector and the tech sector. So for you guys, I know you cover a lot of startups across Africa. So I wanted to find out from you, which regions in Africa are receiving most of this funding, and why is it going in that direction?
In Africa, Western region, Western Africa.
Talking Nigeria, Ghana.
Yeah. And we had a podcast with Dream VC about a month ago, where they said 45% of startups that get money, 75% of startups that get money are not of African origin, have an African father. So it raised more questions than answered questions about where the money was going. So West Africa is very strong. They've got the most unicorns. I think they have 5 of the 7 that exist on the continent. So yeah, West Africa is exactly where all the money is going.
Okay, so if you're looking at the trends, right, they tell us tech and healthcare are receiving most of the funding. They tell us West Africa is receiving most of the funding. So what do startups on this side of the continent need to do so that the funds need to start also flowing towards Southern Africa more? Because when I was looking at it also, of the totals that you were talking about, Southern Africa is a region, we're sitting on maybe 100 million, right? And when you're talking 100 million from maybe 3-4 billion that's coming onto the continent, that's a drop in the bucket, right?
Actually, 89% of all the investments that come into startups on the continent pretty much go to Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa. So 89% of the 2 billion that was made last year is going into 4 countries.
Okay, so what does the rest, in your opinion, and we'll start with Valentine and then Mike, you can take it from there. What do the rest of these countries that are not getting as much funding, need to do so that we can attract the same, if not more, in terms of funding? Because the fact is, money is the one that's going to drive anything forward. So we need the money to start getting into the ecosystems that we can tap into as well. So what needs to be done?
So whoever knows who's going to hate me because they know what I'm going to say. The first thing is understanding brand strategy. So when investors come and look at you, they're looking at your brand. Do you understand what brand equity is? Have you built a persona or a story around your product? Can you tell a story around your product? So we come in there as Southern African startups with logos, and it doesn't really give us a fair reflection of what we're trying to build. So when I ran into AfriBlocks, I was really impressed by how they laid out their brand. It's clear, it's concise, it's repeatable, it's consistent. Those things are fantastic markets for investors. They understand that we can trust you because you at least know what your product is. The second thing I think we need to do is not look at money outside, but reform investment culture locally. So I'm pretty sure we all know that when anyone's investing in anything in Zimbabwe, it's property. They build houses, they rent them out. Fair and fine. But startups need money. And when you invest in startups, you need to change the way you think. You're not investing in rent that you're going to get monthly. It's potential and idea. So it's $100,000 you can put to the side knowing that in maybe 5-10 years, I'll have $10 million worth. So if we reform investment culture, especially in Zimbabwe where no one is investing in small businesses, that's great. And the third thing, again, it's locally focused, is having a comprehensive startup act. So the only way we can grow to the point that we can then build these brands is having a startup act that supports startups. So for example, easements of stuff like the IMT, intermediate money transfer tax, pushing a tax-free basis for 5 years, giving more tax credits, that could help startups fund themselves instead of looking for funding. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And Mikey, do you have anything to add to that?
Pretty much what I mentioned before. If you look at a lot of these startups, they're not doing anything crazy. They're not inventing the wheel. What they're doing is providing solutions to, African solutions to African problems, pretty much. They are addressing the peculiarities of the African market, and it's nothing really that's truly out of the box that they're doing. So even, let's say if it was in Zim, you then just look at a way of addressing the shortcomings of our financial systems, our outdated payment systems, and technology in general. So you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to find a solution best suited to your, circumstances. It's like even with, let's say everyone is now on the, say Bitcoin, no offense, maybe Bitcoin is not necessarily what we need in Zim right now. There's so many other problems and issues that need to be addressed that may seem so basic at the time, but it could be revolutionary for the country, for the continent, because of, unfortunately, how far behind we are.
Yeah.
So we really need to think of African solutions to African problems. And we just need to rise to the occasion and actually be innovative in that sense.
Okay. I think the next thing that I want us to talk about is we want to bring it to a more personal level for everyone who's here. Because everyone in here wants to make money. Am I right? Is there anyone who doesn't want to make money? Yeah. So as professionals in our different fields, right? AfriBlocks is built a platform where we're saying whatever you do, you can do it on a global level. You don't have to focus on the local market. The local market is just as important, but the world is your oyster. As far as the world goes, that's as far as your reach can go. But like you're saying, our financial systems are not exactly best aligned to where the rest of the world is. Like you're saying, we're a bit archaic. Our payment systems are outdated. If you want to pay for Netflix, you have to jump through hoops even for something as simple as that. So what methods can professionals use to enable to integrate themselves on a personal level into the global financial system without having to strain themselves and crack their minds to think about the ways they can go into that? Okay, so what I'm asking you is, let's say I'm a professional, right? I have a skill, I'm a writer. But I want to participate in the greater global economy, right? what can I do? What tidbits can I use to be able to position myself in a way that I can benefit the most from whatever systems that I'm working in? I don't know if I'm making sense. Am I? Okay.
All right. First of all, I'd actually start off with just your computer skills. Let me go back. A lot of skills are, split to hard skills or soft skills. And as Zimbabweans, a lot of us already have this hard skills, which is the actual qualification. We have the knowledge, but I think we need to then improve on our soft skills as people in order to actually be able to position yourself on the global stage. So I'll go back to computer skills. And with the pandemic coming through, I think, we really had to, even for those that didn't, use Zoom much or anything like that, we really had to improve our communication skills online. Just being able to use computers, because you know what, we take some things for granted that we may not think that people need to up their knowledge on, but computer skills are definitely that. I mean, I realized that at our office at Carrick. So prior to the pandemic, every meeting that we had with clients was face-to-face. It had to be face-to-face that I'm meeting with you. And then when the pandemic happened, for like a couple of weeks, people were really confused as to now how to go about it. We really thought that's the end of our business because we'd never been conducting any of our meetings via Zoom. And some people didn't even know where to start, even like the older advisors. And we were already in a position where we thought this is how the business is going to end. But after some time of even just some training and embracing certain systems and the company coming up with certain online systems that permitted us to work from anywhere really, we were now able to take meetings from home and even at the office, but it now made us realize that we're not limited to actually providing advice to Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe. And that's when we actually expanded our business to Zimbabweans all over the world. We deal with a lot of expats now, and it was actually due to that the business actually performed quite well, especially in 2020, because we realized that there's so many high net worth individuals that are working in countries like, there's Zimbabweans in Afghanistan, there's Zimbabweans in Yemen, in Sudan, that are earning quite a significant amount of money that haven't been tailored to. So it was even just through polishing up our skills in that way, in that sense, as individuals and as a company. The company itself also improved its online systems that were able to even increase our capacity and increase our reach. So I think it's very important to really sharpen up our computer skills in that sense, because it really, at that point you realize that the world really is your oyster, and nothing is out of reach. And another thing, is improving your communication skills. I mean, when we're hiring at our company, you have someone coming through with, like, let's say 5 A's, or they've got a first class degree and all of that. But once you actually sit down with them and try to have a conversation with them, it's nothing can really come out. They can't communicate well with you. And in today's world, especially in wealth management, it's all about selling yourself to people. People buy people before they buy anything. There's situations where I'll have a conversation with a client, and before I even discuss the investment, I already know that he's going to become my client, purely based off of the conversation that we've had and your communication skills. So you really need to be able to sell yourself, and especially if you're in the tech startup sector, you need to pitch to these companies. You need to pitch to the executives at Google. They don't even need to see what you've done on paper or what systems you have in place or what you're offering. They need to buy you first, and that's very, very important. I have a lot of clients that don't even really know much about their investments really, and they just trust that you're doing it because you sold yourself to them. Yeah. So I think communication skills are very important in that sense.
Yeah, I actually like what you said when you said people buy people. Because also in AfriBlocks, it's one thing that we've come to realize that a lot of clients will say, okay, we're just going to discuss the job specs, but I'm definitely working with you because I like your personality, I like the way you communicate, I like how you clarify things, I like how punctual you are, things like that. So she's very right when she says people buy people, and I think that's another thing that a change in attitude that if we work towards as a collective, things can work better. I was actually laughing the other day. I see Kevin in the back there. He tweeted, it was like, if people in Zimbabwe could reply emails quickly, we would get things done more efficiently, because things that should take a day end up taking 4 or 5 days just because somebody doesn't reply an email. So it's just small things like that that then affect the greater perspective of things, but I digress. I'm going to go back to you, Valentine, and say, so you as the editor for TechZim, what with all these things that we're talking about funding, about the industries that the funding is going to and so forth, what are just give us 3 things that you think startups in Zimbabwe are not doing that the other unicorns on the continent, the unicorns in the continent have done, and all the other big startups, because Kenya has a lot of big startups. Nigeria is booming big time. What are they doing that we're not? Just 3 things, 3 main things that you think they are doing better than us.
That's a difficult question, but
it's very difficult. We'll try, yeah.
The first will be reiterating my first point about branding. Just if you can find someone who does brand strategy, just please do it. It's a cost you can incur now that you can grow into. I'm sure all of us have seen Mukuru changing their branding. Now guess how much that's going to cost them to refit all those billboards, all those signage and everything. If you're a startup, grow into your brand, grow into that logo. Don't wait to then get big and then start rebranding. I think we were told Econet, it cost Econet in the podcast we had with Sherman by the way, from Honor Design, it cost them $60,000 to do the new logo, just the logo. Now imagine your company now being close to being a unicorn and you're paying $60K just to change the logo. So grow into your brand, get your logo, grow into it. The second thing is budgeting. When that funding comes in, people love money. We now find interesting things to do with it, but apportion your budget before you get the money and make sure you are overestimating what you need. Because sometimes running into expense, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that people never realize how much things really cost down the line. So just overestimate what you need and I think you'll be fine. The third thing is take risks. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't take risks, you're not going to get where you need to go because you'll begrudge yourself when someone takes the opportunity you were talking about for months and the person just took the plunge and there you are now saying, okay, so how do we catch up to someone who were 3 months ahead in terms of planning?
Yeah, okay. So now I'm going to open the discussion to you guys. If anyone has any questions about anything that we're talking about, please, by show of hands, and then we can get you to ask the question and we'll try and answer it as best as we can. All of you can't tell me you don't have a question. Okay.
Hi, thank you very much for the insightful panel discussion. So my question is about the issue mentioned about giving African solutions to African problems. So my main issue is then on investment. Because in Zimbabwe, maybe I'm seeing a very simple problem, maybe something like transport, and I want to find a solution for that. But then I don't have the capital in here. So if I need to go to the US and I pitch that idea, will it be appealing enough to someone in the US because maybe that problem in the US was solved 60 years ago? So it basically we're saying whatever they're going to do in return is not to get any money out of it, but it's sort of like goodwill, trying to just help out a nation. So I feel like maybe in that case we might go back to a situation where we're just copying and pasting things that have been done in other nations and maybe just aligning to our culture, which is very good because this is Pan-African, maybe like centered. So I don't know, maybe in terms of maybe they know more about the markets. If you were to bring an idea that was solved years ago and maybe in the US and you're looking for capital there, would they be able to assist you with that capital? Or I don't know, maybe if I put it correct.
Okay, I'll say something, then I'll let these guys also add on to that. The one thing I've learned through my research and working in a startup and everything is at the end of the day, investors want to make money. Doesn't matter whether it's been solved before in another nation, doesn't matter if they don't see the problem. What they're more interested in really is where does the money come in. So, for example, I will use AfriBlocks as an example. AfriBlocks is not the first freelancer marketplace. right, in the world. There's plenty of others. I won't mention them because I can't give them free advertising, but there's many other brands that do something similar. But what we are building is unique in the context that we are addressing challenges that brands that are built in Europe can't address, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. If you're a freelancer on network A and you're working in a country that has clear financial systems, you do your work, they deposit money in your Visa card, you go and use your money. There's no hassles, right? In Zimbabwe, for us to get money to you, my friend, it's tough. You know, we can say, okay, let's use FCA accounts. You can't guarantee that you're going to get it when you need it in cash. Because then our financial systems don't allow you to just use your card to go and pay for APC. You have to get it in cash, go find change money per road, do the things, you know, pay for your fees and things like that. So we're living in a slightly different context that needs unique problems, unique solutions, right? So if you build a brand and you do the things that Valentine was mentioning, have a clear brand strategy, a proper one. Your communication is clear. You're clear about what you do and what you want to do in the future. Trust me, it's not that difficult to attract investment. As long as your things are clear. The problem is trying to explain African problems to someone else's way in which your challenge might be, because they might not understand the things that you're trying to explain, right? But once you clarify things, once your things are clear, you've worked on your brand strategy, you have the right people working on your brand strategy, and your strategy is clear, what your brand is about, what you want to do, what's the problem you want to address, what's the solution, where you're going. If those things are clear, attracting investment is not that difficult. I don't know if you guys want to add something to that.
I think if you're going, let's use the example you used about public transport. Never underestimate the intelligence of people outside Zimbabwe, because they're at a point where the world is so interconnected that they might know that Zoop was the only public transport operator that's allowed in the country, for example. So the ingenuity of your idea has to be how you're going to go around that or through it. So if it's all legal and makes sense, I'm pretty sure you'll find someone, because public transport is one of the most used things in the world. So if you have if you have a way around the regulatory stuff, I'm sure you'll be fine. And again, in simple terms, like we overvalue these theses about, you know, my brand and my thing. Like what Tonga was saying in the beginning, you know, you have to have a one-liner that describes basically what you want to do, what you want to achieve. That gets you in the door. Everything else is now just how you then, you know, build your idea out.
Anything?
I agree with Valentine, especially on branding, knowing yourself. Because if you know yourself and you're sure of yourself, it's a lot easier for you to actually sell yourself to other people and for them to believe in what it is that you want to do and what it is that you want to achieve. And sometimes as simple as your solution may seem or feel, and it may feel as though it's even being sorted out in other countries, people might see, you know, when you're seeking assistance in terms of investments, people might actually see even loopholes or even opportunities for growth in that situation, and they could actually see the potential. And if you also then find the potential in that investment and not look at it as just, okay, yes, you might want to sort out a problem in the country, but people speculate to accumulate. People want to invest so that they can make something from it. So unfortunately, even when you are pitching it to clients, you might not really see it as going far or making you a large chunk of money, but at least just have an idea of where it could go, of how big it could be, and be able to just sell that to investors when you are talking to them.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any question?
Thanks to the speakers. I just want to comment to what this gentleman was saying. So, if you're speaking to a US investor, they're looking for big gains, right? So you need to differentiate, are you a startup or an SME? Because you play in two different fields. Startup is mom pop. SME, mom pop. When you're talking startup, we're talking serious growth, your Facebook, your Uber, etc. So for comparison, one of my friends in Nigeria, he had month-on-month growth of almost 50% and quarter-on-quarter growth of 700% a quarter. So now if you take that to an investor, now you're talking. But now if you're still playing, we do 10%, they're not listening to you. That's one. And then for the Zimbabwean entrepreneur, even when you're building in Zimbabwe, use Zimbabwe as your testing pool. It's a very small market. We have the whole of SADC. So if I'm an investor and you create this transport thing, or let's say food delivery, and you go to South Africa, Mr. D got lots of money. They'll cancel you within a day. Uber. So you come in as number 4, you'll be non-existent. So they need to know that I can take this business and go within the region and you'll make an impact. So, yeah, so that's basically what I have to say. You're competing globally. Yes, you're amongst us, but there's so much money that you can't just play within your own pond, because once you jump out, you get killed.
I think it's really good to be wary of the growth trend, because VCs can then use you as a leveraging chip to then sell you to the next buyer, the next buyer, the next buyer. You're now just a cash cow that they, and growth is not exponential. Growth stops. Uber stopped, Facebook stopped, Netflix is now recessing. So the growth game is I don't know what to call it. I don't know, a better term for limited returns or diminishing returns. Is that the right term? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So growth is not something you can. Your product is everything. Your product is 100%. If you design your product, I don't think anything will shake you. Google is a fantastic example of something. Amazon again, of a product that solves a consistent problem very well and all the time.
Okay. I'm going to assume there are no more questions. Okay. We're just going to take the last 2. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you guys for the discussion. This question is directed to Mikey. You mentioned soft skills. I'm an educator, and it's one thing that I've noticed that a lot of people lack. So you mentioned that sometimes somebody applies to your company and then they lack in that department. I've heard this a lot of times. So what do you do at your company? What do you do when there's a smart person, maybe you read something, or maybe they're doing something and you see, okay, this person is doing good things and there's potential, but then, well, you don't buy them. You say you buy people. But then when you see them, the soft skills are lacking. So what do you do?
A lot of the time, unfortunately, they don't, depending on the competition at that time when they are hiring, they might not end up getting the job mainly because of that. Because even if you look at some of the people that we work with, they might be people, you might come to us with a master's degree and all these other qualifications. But because the wealth management sector is predominantly about just sitting in front of people, from 9 until 5, you're just in meetings. It's like pitching. But you're pitching yourself to potential investors and clients. That's what matters the most. Because we've had situations where we have people that are very book smart, but when it's time to actually pitch to a client, they're shaking or they're forgetting things, and it'll be the reason why a deal falls through. So you have someone who's very book smart, who knows everything. They know about the funds, about the flows, about returns, and the various sectors in detail. But they won't be making as much money as the person who's just good at selling themselves, a good salesperson really, and good at communicating with other people and gaining clients' trust. So we've seen that costing us, as at the firm, it's cost us quite a lot, and it's pretty much they changed the way in which we look at our recruitment process. So a lot of the time, if there is potential, there are people that will take on and obviously take through different types of training so that they can gain those soft skills. But it really has to be, the potential really has to be there. But it varies from job to job. But in wealth management, because you spend the entire day just sitting in front of clients and pitching, it's very important that you're actually able to communicate with people from Zimbabwe, people from East Africa, West Africa, Europeans, Americans. You need to be able to do that. So if the potential is there, we do take on people sometimes and then give them the training that is required, and then we just take it from there.
Okay, while the mic is moving on that as well, what I'll add to that is, a lot of brands, a lot of clients that we also work with, time is money for all of these brands. the reason why they will say, okay, if you don't have these skills, let's move on to the next person most of the time is because they just don't have the time to be teaching some of these things. But we live, our generation, where we have a blessing that we live in a world where learning is free. Educating yourselves on a lot of soft skills, or what they call transferable skills, will go a long way in assisting you. So what do I mean when I say transferable skills? Transferable skills are skills that you can use in any job market, right? So your computer skills are transferable. Writing is a transferable skill. Design is a transferable skill. Maybe you're knowing how your Excels, all of these softwares, those are transferable skills. Skills that can help you to work in a bank today and work in a hospital tomorrow. But because you have those transferable skills, it's easy to transfer you from one sector to the next, or from one line of business into the next. So I will encourage you guys, take time to learn all of these transferable. There's a lot of free resources on the internet. AfriBlocks has one, Tonga is gonna hate me for mentioning this, but AfriBlocks is a partnership with DataCamp, right? So if you're registered as an AfriBlocks freelancer, if you go on DataCamp, you can take DataCamp courses for free, right? Your data science, all of these fancy tech skills, you can learn them, and you can learn them for free. That's the most important thing. These are things that people 10 years ago were paying lots of money to learn it in university or whatever. They are free now. So take advantage of any free learning resources. Learn as many transferable skills as you can, and it will be much easier to get yourself in the job market. Last question.
Hi, thank you to the panelists for the amazing discussion. I have a question regarding the funding, especially in fintech. How many of your investors, Mikey, are investing in Series A and seed capital, startups, basically?
So at Carrot Wealth, we don't really then invest into the seed capital and Series A. It's all pretty much limited to like closed funds. So we deal with fund managers, and they already have pre-selected funds. And most of them are limited. That's one of the things that we actually sell to Africans, is that you are getting investment advice from Africans, and it's on the continent, but everything that all the funds and everything that you're getting access to is offshore. So it's all predominantly in Europe and in the States, and they're all mainly like closed funds, and they're handled by the fund managers. So, and because of our investment strategy, it's very low risk. So it's things like such as bonds, American bonds, and a lot of investment structures that don't have much volatility in them. Nothing that's really risky, nothing along those lines. I guess it's a bit not old school, but we're very risk averse in our strategy, so we don't go into those like seed funds, seed capital.
Okay, Valentine, would you know any local investors who are doing that?
I'll be lying if I said I don't.
Okay, but what I'll do for you is I'll find out for you, and then I'll see you afterwards and I'll tell you. Alright, so I think that will be all from us. Anything else you want to say?
Oh no, they are our competitor, but you can actually go to De Beer. They have a wider option when it comes to investments. They are our competitor, but I guess so that you know, they are a company that you can approach. Their investment strategy is a bit more aggressive, and they're a lot more open to such investments, especially, and it's very friendly in terms of for locals who also have funds locally. We are limited to offshore funds. So if you actually have money that's here in Zim, they can assist you with that as well.
All right, so that will be all from us, guys. Thank you very much. I'll give it to Faith.
I just wanted to say something that Mikey mentioned about the importance of just basic computer skills, and maybe just, going with the flow of technology nowadays. It took me back to online learning. So my son is in grade 2, and so in his class, I think his teacher she's probably in her 50s or something. And so Zoom came along, and we have this teacher that's just been introduced to this application. And she kept screaming, "Who's muting me? Who's muting me?" So these little kids, they are 5, but they already know how to mute the teacher. So all we could see is the teacher screaming, but we couldn't hear her because she was muted. So it's very important, guys, that we know what's going on, and you just stay relevant to the market and everything. And it's very great that we have people that have come to share with us. So the next speaker is Dr. Candiero, and I will have Chungai to come and introduce him. So let's give it up for them.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Faith. All right, thank you, Faith. The discussion we just had was great. There was this story about a guy who was campaigning to become the president, right? In Africa. So, he campaigned and everything, and, he won, right? And now he was like, okay, I want to implement. That one was real, he really wanted to do what he was campaigning to do. But then, he went to the Minister of Finance, he had a list of things, we need to do this and this and this. And this is how much it's going to cost. Then the finance guys are like, we don't have the money. So the lesson from that was you will need, if your financial systems are not working, you can talk and say we need to do this and this, but you will not succeed. And it so happened that guy was president from a former French colony, and they still are kind of a colony of France because some of their money reserves are actually kept in France. And this is 2022, and it's still happening right now. And whatever money they make, they send a portion of that to France. And then they go back to France like, hey, that money, our money that we gave you, can we have some of it? We need to build a road. This is happening in 2022. And, I was like, if I was president, like that alone, that whole structure that you have to follow before you can get something done, is very hindering, in terms of progress. And like right now, if you want to send a wire transfer to Mozambique, they're next to us. But we use a system called SWIFT. And that transaction is approved in the States. Can you believe that? Mozambique is right next to us. But that transaction goes through the SWIFT system, it goes to the US, it gets approved, and then it's transferred, and then it reflects in Mozambique. So all of that says our financial systems need to be improved. And that's why, that discussion was really, really important. But moving on, I want to talk about students. Right now, we're all professionals. They're software developers, they're digital marketers, they're designers, virtual assistants. But all of that is great, and this is, what literally AfriBlocks' professionals are right now, developers, designers, and things like that. But there are two dots I want to connect. The first thing is there's Africa, which has immense potential, which is the youngest region in the world, which by 2050 is going to be, the biggest population from any continent. Right now we have about 1.3 billion people, about 200 in the African diaspora, which makes it about 1.5 billion people. That is the same size as China. That is actually India is actually smaller than Africa in terms of population. But Africa has so many resources, there's so much land, and you cannot notice mentally how big Africa is. And that young population, 60% is under the age of 25. And those are the professionals that are graduating from university. Those are the professionals that just finished their first degree, their courses, they finished college. And now they are in a space where they're trying to figure out what next. So what we are trying to push here at AfriBlocks, which is the second dot, by 2030, there are going to be as much as 85 million jobs that are going to be left unfilled globally. And these jobs are in emerging technology. Talk about data science, data analyst, artificial intelligence, machine learning. They're going to be left unfilled not because there are not enough people, but because there are not enough people skilled in those roles. So what we are saying is we're starting right now to provide the resources to that digital marketer to say you can also learn data analysis, you can also learn machine learning while you do what you're already doing, but here are the resources for free. So we have a partnership with DataCamp, I mean Josh mentioned, but we don't know how long we're going to have that partnership. It should last for a year. Right now it's literally there, and I look at the statistics of people who are registered. I think we've had about 1,800 people registered. Then about half of them, that's all they did. They just registered. And then another half of that half actually started a course. But we have about 300 people who actually completed the first course. That's from 1,800. So I say this to mention, these courses are not going to be available for too long. Things change, but right now they are. So take advantage of them so that you are one of the people, the scarce people that the world is looking for, the talent in those emerging roles. So I mentioned this to say, that's why we invited, I think 3 weeks ago, we were at Africa University to talk to final year students, to give them these resources, because for us, that's what community building is, working on the ground, visiting these locations. We are going to be visiting the University of Zimbabwe. I think the day before yesterday, we're talking to Zimbabwe Open University. So we invited Dr. Kandero to tell us about, as a student who's going into this space, what to expect. And I always say, I think I'm still a student actually, because I'm learning every single day. I went to University of Zimbabwe, computer science and mathematics, and so what I did was amazing. But to tell the truth, I think 10% of what I learned there is what I'm using right now. 90% is things that I had to pick up on the way. So I say that to mean all of us, even if you are, doing a virtual assistant, for example, you're a designer, you're a marketer, it's not difficult for you to start to do data science. It is difficult, but starting is not hard. So you're going to need to be consistent, but the good thing with our courses is it's not a course where you say you should start here and finish here. You take your own pace. You start today, you can finish today, or you can finish next week. Some courses are 2 hours, some courses are as much as 20 hours. It just depends on the level. So anyone in any role right now is able to take these emerging roles. So I can talk forever. Dr. Kandero.
Well, testing the mic. You can hear me well? Thank you. It's good. It's a pleasure to be speaking to a lot of young professionals like you. My talk today, the brief talk I'm going to have is on how universities can prepare students to join international organizations. I'm going to speak from the context of experience. we all know that in this country, the university curriculum is standardized. The Zimbabwe Council of Higher Education, they outlined, they recommended a minimum body of knowledge for each university. So there is not much difference between graduates from one university in terms of the content they learn. But what we want to talk is what then makes a difference. So the question I'm addressing today, I'm going to tackle it from a perspective of a student. To say, how do you make a career in an international organization, and also from a perspective of educators, to say how can universities scaffold students or young professionals to be able to have a successful career in an international organization. So my response or my guidance is based on my experience as a career professional at ExxonMobil, where I started as a graduate trainee in 1994, became a systems engineer, then became progressed to the ICT infrastructure specialist, then progressed to the ICT technical leader for Southern and East Africa, and then I progressed to the position of regional ICT manager for Southern Africa for ExxonMobil. But then it was also based on my experience as a student of University of Zimbabwe, University of South Africa, University of Pretoria, University of Cape Town, and ultimately University of Witwatersrand, where I obtained my PhD. Fortunately and unfortunately, in 2006, due to American foreign policy, the head office for ExxonMobil Eastern and Southern Africa, which was at Pegasus House, was closed. I say unfortunate because it was the end of interesting and rewarding career. But I also say fortunately because it gave me, opened new doors for me to start doing other things. And now I am serving as head of Department of Computer Science and Information System at Africa University. I actually helped finding that department. So that's the fortunate and the unfortunate part of it. So during recently, a colleague of mine at the University of Jena in Germany invited me to be part of a panel or part of an organizing team of a speaker series on the topic was starting your career international organization as employers. My role was to blend the Q&A session with practical experience. So the series aimed at giving students the opportunity to get to know a variety of possible tasks in international organizations and familiarize them with requirements of working in such organizations, especially since many students, they do not aspire to be PhD students. They wish to branch into the professional world soon after. I never thought I would do a PhD. When I graduated from University of Zimbabwe, I had a double major and I was awarded in computer science and statistics. I awarded a scholarship to go to University of Pennsylvania. I said, what is this? Who does that? So I went looking for a job. But then here I am. I'm back in academia with a PhD, doing the things that I refused when I had all the energy. So I'm just giving you this background before I share the exact. So the organizer deliberately decided to invite young professionals who recently made their way into the organization and started career, as we had agreed that these young professionals will better relate to the lives of students, their questions and their concerns, since they're young professionals. So this pragmatic approach and this pragmatic and informal approach with young professionals was to allow realistic assessment of the requirements and actual experience which the students were sharing. So the 6, in total, we managed to attract 6 young professionals. They're coming from diverse organizations, UNHCR, UNICEF, OCHA, Aspen Institute, Democratic Society, Police 180. So each speaker started giving a brief background, giving their experience and how they had made it into how they made a career into an international organization. So here is what we learned. Number 1, so it's interesting that some of the aspects that have been raised here actually correspond to what we found out. Number 1, language, intercultural competence, and soft skills. Language, intercultural competence, and soft skills are key if you want to make it in an international organizations. So the various speakers addressed a number of key qualifications that are necessary and useful for starting a career. So in particular, they highlighted the need for language skills that form the basis of daily interaction in all work processes. So in addition to the English language, students should acquire at least one other foreign language. So I recall when I graduated from UZ and I was writing my CV. Fortunately, my father is Portuguese speaking, my mother. So and some friends, it inspired me to start French lessons at Alliance Française. So I wrote English, spoken Portuguese, and basic French. So my CV went. So there were many of us, but I tell you, I was one of the few that were called for the interview, because this was an international organization with a head office for Eastern and Southern Africa, and it also covered some countries in West Africa. So saying writing English and Shona was not enough. So you can see that a language is important. So at Africa University, it's a bilingual university. If you study, you have to make sure that you do French or Portuguese if you are from English-speaking country. And when you graduate, you have a language. So that is very important. There's been efforts for people to teach Korea, and there's been a representative teaching Korea, and so forth. So that is the importance of languages. That's how important languages are. So along with this, the speakers also emphasized intercultural competence play an important role to be able to work with people from different societal, political, and cultural background on the job. So we had graduated from UZ. We were a bunch of graduates, and UZ that time, very Zimbabwean, very little international students at all. So I recall at one point that we were sent for a course titled Working for a Multicultural Organization, because the consultants had detected that lack of understanding each other across culture. So that is important. So, in order to develop these skills, all speakers recommended that the students should gain experience abroad at early stage, for example, through study abroad programs or internship. These internships are there, international exchange programs are there. You can apply for them, and some of them exist by nature of bilateral or multilateral agreement between our university and other universities. And now, speaking of soft skills, they've already been highlighted. Soft skills such as ability to work in teams, result-oriented work, and appropriate handling of stressful situations are also very important. So all the 6 speakers agreed that working for international organizations means project-based work and a lot of writing, regardless of the size of the organization and the nature of the job. So the ability to write reports in short time and adapt them to different audiences and presentation formats has been described as essential. So soft skills as communication skills, presentation skills. I remember when we finished our courses, graduate trainees, ExxonMobil had to hire Ensign Young to train us on how to make presentations. We were technocrats who had graduated from UZ. All we knew was mathematics and algorithms, and there was no course of communication skills in our. So as someone was speaking, we were very crude, true Yuba. So, so it's fortunate that this is an organization that had experience. ExxonMobil is then was the largest oil company in the world. So they're all over the world. So the resources to train us. They did not marginalize us. Thank God. So as you see that other aspects, what we do, for example, at Africa University, people who have field reports, they go for final year, you attend honor seminars, at least 4 honor seminars addressed by professionals, then you have to write a report. And when you go on attachment, you have to do an attachment report. So that's the first lesson. We are saying language, intercultural skills, and soft skills. And there are so many ways we can develop soft skills. There's internet, a lot of, in our time, there was nothing like that. So the second point was get a realistic idea of what it means to work for international organization and its challenge. So daily work routines of international organizations differ significantly. Working in large organizations means you navigate a hierarchy, hierarchically organized institution that offers comparatively little room for your own initiatives. I remember when I started working, and you could not, my friends working for smaller companies were using Windows NT, then Windows 95. You cannot just migrate an operating system until it's certified across the corporation, when all the releases are managed and certified. So it gets frustrating when others are upgrading operating systems daily. But this is done for a reason, security for a huge organization. So those are some of the limitations or frustrations I can identify with and relate. So by contrast, young professionals have ample opportunity to develop their ideas and initiatives and implement their own projects in smaller or non-governmental organizations. That's what you have to be aware of. Okay? So work routines in the field bring about different challenges compared to tasks and processes in headquarters of organizations, like where we started our career. So this starts with a very this limits the circumstances. The circumstances are very limiting. So you need to be very. You need to be aware of it. You want to. Am I for the international organization, or am I for a small environment? Because it can be frustrating. It's a rewarding career, and you have to know what you you have to know what you want to do. So this starts with a very environment and circumstances under which one will have to perform, but also includes a diverse activities as well as interactions with other sets of stakeholders and local partners. Therefore, all the speakers advise students to gain comprehensive insights into different fields of work of international organizations through multiple internships, so that the field in which so that you identify the field in which you want and can do and you are able to undertake successfully. So also what is important to know is working in international organizations is a personal challenge and comes with strings attached. Choosing a career in international organizations requires a high levels of flexibility and mobility under conditions of uncertainty and low predictability. Contracts are fixed term and job offers are made on short notice. So the next posting may bring you unfamiliar to an unfamiliar terrain and requires completely different set of skills. So developing and maintaining a reliable professional network is also crucial in staying up to date with contacts of professionals. So normally people who are working for an international organization, whether they're working for a World Health Organization, UNICEF or UN, so that network is always free. There's that flexibility for you to move from one organization to another. But additionally, juggling demands from work on one hand and family and private relations on the other poses a challenge. I remember myself, I got married when I was working in Malawi, and soon after getting married, I came to Zimbabwe. I was posted to Kenya. I left my wife pregnant, and she was alone. So it was very challenging. And even my sisters would pass through and say, are you sure? Where is your husband? So it's so, and she would cry, and I had to cut my assignment short because they were promising me that we have to go to the Africa Center of Expertise and so forth. But that's how it is. But for other people, it works better that way. But for me, it didn't work better that way. So I had to cut and come back. So that is the challenge that we I'm talking about. But this was just to underscore the importance of getting a realistic idea of what it means to work for an international organization and the challenges entailed. And I've just shared with you briefly. And the third lesson I would like to share was make use of support programs that help you find your way into international organizations. So there are ample support opportunities which pave the way for a career in international organizations. So the speakers, our guests, they used different programs to gain access into international organizations. So these programs, these avenues are many. Some which attended the Mercator Fellowship, some might attended the Junior Professional Officer. And recently, I remember last week, I just posted an advert for UNICEF International Internship. So basically, in a nutshell, these are the points that I was saying that in addition to the hard skills which are standardized to every accredited program for international organizations. There are so many. You find some that say 12 skills to join international school, some say 8, some say 7. So, but here I'm saying number 1, language, intercultural competence, and soft skills are important. Number 2, you get a realistic idea of what it means to work in an international organization in this challenge, because it can be rewarding and it can also be limiting. And then make sure you use support programs, whether they are national, whether they are limited to institution, and so that's it. So, those are the 4 points I want to highlight. I just want to relate to something briefly before what Tongai said about difficulty of opportunities because of our color. So when I left Harare, like I said, it never works for me to leave my family. So I went with my family to South Africa. I got a job with Pinnacle Micro. I went to Maputo. And corporates, this was a different kind of corporate world altogether. It was a poor firm, so we were not getting along quite well. So I quit that company and I formed my own because I was the country manager in Mozambique selling software. So I formed my own company, Business Alliance Africa, in Maputo. I was a Microsoft distributor selling software. And because most companies in Mozambique, they are owned by white South Africans, it was very difficult for me to make inroads. So it's difficult sometimes. So then that's when I then went into academia, and but still I still run my family company. We run 2 fuel stations in Harare now. But I'm working academia. So that's briefly about it and the advice that I wanted to share with you. Any questions? Yes.
In the universities that where you teach in academia, how fast is it for the lecturers to adapt to the new type of work for them to be able to impact new knowledge to students? I was in class with Tongai when we were doing mathematics, and I think some of the things that we learned were so irrelevant. But not only that, I don't think any of my lecturers that I left at school 6 years ago have adapted to anything new that the world is requiring. So you find that any of the students that are graduating out of university right now are not fit for purpose in industry. What are the mechanisms for lecturers and teachers in universities for them to accelerate quickly to be able to impact relevant information to their students today in the Zimbabwe universities, for instance?
Yeah, thank you. I also went to UZ, and I was doing computer science and statistics. Most of my lecturers were Russian PhDs from Bulgaria and so forth. And yeah, they were not given that practical experience. And for that reason, I never really wanted to be a lecturer. Because it's the nature of the career the way it is, where people progress and without joining industry, okay? They start to be right at the helm of knowledge transfer and dissemination. Yes, the uptake is slow. It's slow, but that's why you find that for academia, there are two types of programs, right? There is a PhD and there is a doctorate. Doctorate is meant for people who are technocrats, okay? So that they gain their knowledge and they can work with the higher and tertiary education with the correct mixture of industry experience and theoretical knowledge, the way it is. So, and many of them, they become adjunct professors, and lecturer mobility is very encouraged. That's why even in the rating of ZimChair, they encourage staff mobility, staff exchange programs. But yeah, it is difficult, but I'm saying those are the frameworks that we have. A mixture of adjunct professors and a mixture of mobility of lecturers. Within 5 years, a lecturer must have a contact leave or sabbatical leave to do that. But under the circumstances, either the universities, they don't want to pay, or they don't want for the students, the lecturers stay like that. Yeah, it's a challenge, but there is a solution for that. There is a solution for that. And someone like you might also want to give it a hand later. Thank you. I don't know if I answered your question.
My question is directed to Courtney earlier about setting up. It said that if students coming out of uni or that are in uni want to actually take an opportunity to open up their minds and get that exposure, they need to go and study abroad. And I understand that there are a lot of opportunities available to do so, but because of the situation in Zim, it's already quite competitive. And even though the opportunities are there, the amount of places are limited. So not everyone will have a chance to go there. Even funding-wise, not everyone has the money to go to universities abroad or just take some time out. So what would you then suggest people do if they don't have access to resources like that, or they don't have the opportunity to study abroad? What would you then recommend that students do to get that exposure or to become more reminded, as you said?
Hello, yeah, I was just listening. Despite international exposure, I think there are a lot of other local opportunities that happen that can bring students up to speed. I'll give, for example, the Junior Achiever program in Zimbabwe. And it can actually bring students up to speed. But not necessarily depending on those limited opportunities. You can leverage your own connections and your own networks to gain international exposure. But it's unfortunate that we have those limited. For example, at Africa University, we signed an MOU with the university in the USA, but it's for the parents to afford that limited money to pay the air ticket. They are not affording. So we find that only they want total sponsorship for everything. So because the parents cannot afford, the economy is limited and the opportunities are there. So it's a challenge that we pass through, and but out of these challenges, some stars still emerge. Thank you.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So getting into an international organization is already hard enough as a black person, let alone being a woman. You're a man, but I mean, do you have any tips on things that women could do or resources that we could take advantage of as females that would also give us, equal footing as black men trying to get into the same international organizations? Because they're already predominantly white, especially in Zim, or anywhere really, all over the continent. Most expats are white. So as a Black woman, are there any resources or anything that we take advantage of that will just make the playing field a bit more equal? Well, not equal, but better for us as women.
Okay, so I would say, for the girl child now, I think the playing field, the things are much better. And I have a son and 2 girls. So I now believe that my 2 girls stand a better chance than my son if they do the right thing, if they respect themselves, if they brand themselves, and they remain focused. I think the times we are now, I think there's much focus and consideration on the girl child. It's true, in the past it has been like that, but even in our times, now there was now statistics to say how many graduate trainees, how many were males, out of the females, how many now are managers and so forth, and how many got married and spoiled their career. So I would say, true, it's a concern, but for now, I think the world has had this concern, and there is a fair amount of opportunity. All you need to do now as a girl child is to stay focused and not believe what they tell you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think mine is a follow-up question, should I say, from the previous question that you asked. Like, as a training institution, you primarily are responsible for training the next or upcoming professionals, right? So we have had an instance where we have children or we have students that are coming out of university, and part of what they have done and what they then meet in the business world are 2 worlds apart, especially in skill-oriented professional careers. So what have you done as an institution to probably bridge the gap, or at least try to prepare students to become better or to be at par with what is happening globally in terms of probably skills development or in terms of professional development? What I'm trying to say is we have a situation whereby we have you as an institution, a private institution, which is totally different from state-owned institutions. So, which means you have a sort of a leeway in your programming, which is totally different from what other institutions are giving. So what have you done in terms of making sure that your students are able, in fact, to adapt to changes as they happen frequently, especially to fields related to things like computer science, artificial intelligence, and a whole lot?
Yeah, sure. It's like I'm saying, there's a lot that can be done. But first of all, let me, before I answer what can be done in terms of upskilling the student, making sure that they have got the right skills and competencies to make it. The first aspect that we are addressing last week, we were having a workshop, and we were training people on career guidance, because it has been found that most people, the careers they do at the university is not their passion at heart, and that matters a lot in terms of how you continue learning if you don't have passion for that area. So that aspect, career guidance, is very important. So that what you do, you are passionate about it. And now, in terms of inspiring students, now making sure that they have adequate skills. In terms of soft skills, there are now a lot of free courses that that are available on very nominal license fee, and people can get courses on communication skills, presentation skills, and so forth. But we find that when you do that, there are very few takers, like Tongai was saying. And we also, the Department of Computer Science, we entered into an MOU with AfriBlocks so that our students have access to those courses, that exactly what Tongai is saying. But the takers are very few. So I believe that it has to do with what you passionately do in your spare time, or you're just taking a career because you've heard that there's money in it. You may not be very passionate about it. Yeah, but there are many opportunities. And even if nobody tells you or gives you a link, you can still find any free link to learn about any soft skill that you want these days. It's very fortunate about that we have such opportunities in life. But yeah, it's a challenge, it's a genuine concern, but it's difficult. Boys will always be boys. Yeah.
I actually have a question rather than a question, because you say you are in the academic industry, and there is a council, you said, which regulates what is taught in the universities. So my request to you is, please may you reach out to those people on behalf of us all, because what is being taught in the university, we get there in the industry, I mean the industry, you are like if you're swimming Mr. Bones. These people are too clear. You have calculated, you said the pump before, but in there you are seeing a basic pump with this extra detail. How do they even think of this? And then you come across maybe their manuals or their books from that side. Because these guys come with those issues. Then you realize, no, it's actually basic stuff. I should have come across these things in that line. But right now, I'm graduating. I'm amazed the entire plan is everything. A man appreciating what is inside there. What is that thing? So I'm just saying, can you please make sure these guys are aware of what is happening? They should allow a dynamic structure of teaching our kids. The learning structure should be dynamic. It should not be as fixed as it is right now. Soft skills, they are very light when you say they are important to us. You get in there, you see the pump that I'm telling you about, it is controlled from one room by a SCADA, and it is controlled from another room by another SCADA. We get playing it. It is all very structured. But how can we start telling somebody who is 30-year-old, you just saw the interface which was playing behind you there, of coding and everything. That person is actually afraid of that interface. You cannot tell somebody who's a 28-year-old graduate, you know what, go on Google and try to learn soft skills to enhance your hard skills that you came up with. Yes, by fashion and everything, but it is hard, let's be realistic. It's hard and it will take a lot of time. And actually you realize you regret, why did they send my kid for 4 years at school when in the end the real thing that he wants here is learning them. It's like those 4 or 5 years were just teaching you to learn, not to learn. We're teaching you to learn, now we want you to go and do it. So they should be dynamic. They should give us a dynamic curriculum so that these guys, when they are coming from school, we have the skills on and now we need the experience. We actually need the skills to be able to be brave enough to go in. But someone out there could have the mind to be able to code in them. They're actually scared of this thing. Because by the time you are trying to tell somebody to get in that field, age always. So I'm asking you to please get your counsels and those guys to tell you what to allow a dynamic portfolio or something, which can always provide it's a request more than a question.
Okay, thank you. I think what you say, what you say is very true about university curriculum and the teaching and learning process. And as I said, the Zimbabwe Council of Higher Education have regulated the university curriculum. They've said these are the minimum board of knowledge, and the assessment criteria are saying which ones are theoretical exams, which are competence-based exams. Students must go on attachment. They've regulated this, but they know it's not happening. So last week I saw a document that says an audit framework. So they are sharing with all the universities that audit framework. It also includes students to say that how do they audit the teaching and learning. But these are just documents, well-written documents. The implementation of part of it takes a lot of funding, takes a lot of motivated staff. So that's the challenge that we face. But yeah, it's true. It's a genuine challenge. But you also need to know that some of the brilliant engineers that we have and technocrats have also emerged from this system and economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. That was eye-opening on so many fronts. So I'm going to call the next panel that's going to be talking about the role of digital media in forming the correct narrative for Africa. So I'm going to call Kevin, I'm going to call Elnathan, and I'm going to call Edwin to come join me. Everyone can hear me, right? Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to introduce the panel, starting from here, going through. This is Elnathan Chitewere. He's a digital media strategist. He's going to tell you guys more about what he does. We have Edwin Chabuka. He's a media producer at TechZim. And we have Kevin Mwenye, who is a PR specialist, public relations, and all communications and all that, right? So what we want to talk about here is digital media has a very important role to play in the way people perceive things. It influences discussion, it influences the direction in which things go and all that. So we want to talk about how African brands, African professionals can make use of digital media, can leverage digital means of communicating the right message about Africa. Because you see, the thing is, a lot of the media that the world consumes is produced in Europe, in America, and so forth, even in our homes, right? The media we produce is not created by Africans for Africans. It pushes a narrative that Europeans and Americans and all these other countries want their people to know about Africa. So you find the BBC will cover 4 hours of wars across Africa, 5 hours of all these bad things of famine and everything, and they won't say a peep about everything good that's also happening on the continent. This is not to say the bad things are not true, but it's also to say there's a lot of other good things that are happening that it lies now in our hands to make sure that we talk about it and we push the right narrative. So we're just going to go straight into it, trying to push, make sure that you guys are out of here before you get frustrated. So I'm going to start with Edwin, right? You work at TechZim, it's one of the biggest online publications in Zimbabwe, cover tech and business. So my question to you is, how is African media performing? Generally, how is it being consumed? What are the numbers around that, and what can be done more to push the African narrative?
All right, thanks. So Africa is a very interesting place when it comes to media because it is very clear-cut between official media, so state media and the like, and offline, unofficial media, so we're talking now YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the like. And a lot is happening in these new social media platforms that are now bringing out other aspects of Africa that probably are not in the scope of traditional media. So even if your BBC comes through and is focusing on a certain area in Africa, there are a lot of other parts of Africa that are probably cultural, economical, that are being focused on by other independent media producers out there. And it's great to see that. I think it was last year in November we attended a Zim YouTubers meetup, which is just a collective, a community of Zimbabwean YouTubers that were in Zim at the time. And it was amazing to see how much diversity there is when it comes to the content that they're just producing for Zimbabwe alone. And this is something that can then be seen in other countries as well in Africa. So there is quite some effort and quite some work that's being done there. It's just that the platforms are not as prevalent as they could be in terms of everyone then now seeing them and following them and actually experiencing the kind of storytelling that's alternative to the stuff we're used to in terrestrial and satellite TV. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting space.
All right, and this one is for you, Kevin. You're more on the PR, the communication side of things. What's the general perception? Because I know you were doing the same things when you were in Russia. When you're on an international level, what's the general perception of African business? And why is our PR and communications not rectifying that if there's a challenge?
Can you guys hear me? Great. Thanks for that, Josh. So before we even get there, if we all go on our phones right now and Google Zimbabwe, the first thing you see on the images tab is war. It's war, right? But we have one of the seven wonders in the world. We have so many great things that happen here. What's the major concern there? What the major concern there is that in the international realm, Zimbabwe is not being represented well, especially with different entities that we have established here. I don't know if you guys have noticed in the past 2 months, companies have been employing a lot of public relations and communications specialists. Because we've seen that there's a gap in narrating company brands, there's a gap in representation by companies. So on the international spectrum, Russia is a very candid example because I even had a point I wanted to tell you guys that the topic is narration of the African story on the international realm or whatever it is. Russia narrates its own stories on Russian platforms. They have a search engine called Yandex. So imagine if you want to Google about Russia, the only thing you understand and see now is the war in Ukraine, pro-NATO. I don't want to get too much into politics. But if you did go on Yandex, you then get different variants from Russian authors. You then get to understand what's really going on in Russia from someone who's pro-Putin and someone who's not. Where I'm getting to is, if we want the Zimbabwean business story to be told, or Uganda, or whatever it is, I would suggest that maybe, if it was possible, Zimbabwe is too small for what I want to present. Probably, let's say, the whole of Africa, then we subdivide it into 3 parts. Have an African search engine that narrates African stories for Africans by Africans. But not neglecting Google, not neglecting everything else, because you also want somewhere where those stories can bounce off and be seen by the international world. So Kevin writes a story about Southern, and we put it on Zimbabwe. That's the search engine, and my blog is there. But obviously you can then share that story to Google. I actually hate Twitter because it's controlled by people that are not Africans. So even if you put your African story on Twitter, it's not always going to be at the top, especially if it's against what everyone else believes in. So it's so far-fetched, but those are the small things we need to look at. And even starting off the ground, I'll give you an example. I know it's the heritage of our school, Prince Edward's. Just renaming Rose Field to Nelson Mandela. That's an African narrative. Even today, this topic alone, AfriBlocks could have said, for this topic, we're going to have Kevin and my brothers here speak in Shona and Debele, then there's an English translator for the digital space. That's where it starts. Because we're actually digital, because we're being seen on YouTube and all of that. So I hope I've answered your question, but for us to get there in the international space and for them to understand us, we need to reimagine and reshape how we operate in Africa and Zimbabwe.
Okay, I like that you mentioned the fact that we need to create these African platforms, right? Specifically with the African market in mind, and make sure that the international market is a plus. Because even you mentioned the Twitters and them, those apps are, to be honest, those apps are not built for Africa. Yeah. Africa is a secondary market. We all get off those apps, they don't care. The markets they're built for, they are serving, and they are serving well. So, to you, Nathan, as a digital media strategist, as a digital marketing strategist, I want to ask, say, what are the best forms of digital media that African brands can use, right? It could be a brand, it could be an African professional. What are the best forms of digital media can we use? And what are the best digital strategies that we can also use to make sure that we're telling the right narrative and that it's reaching the right people that we want it to reach?
Okay. So the best types of media that we can probably take advantage of, this one, it is expensive in a way, but if we could be able to take advantage of paid media, like we take our stories on those platforms like those Google, we place our content there, and then we do social ads, we do display ads, we do video ads. You know what happens when you go on YouTube and you're about to watch a video, then they give you that 15 seconds. So it's a bit expensive, but it will help push the narrative that we want to push out about Africa or about our businesses here in Africa. So that could be also something that we take advantage of, because if we don't push it there, like what Kevin said, he says, you post your story on Twitter or your issues, whatever, it doesn't rank because they don't want you to rank. But you post it there and you promote it on Twitter, then it goes out there, then people get to see it. It's something that we can take advantage of. So paid media would be something that we could take advantage of. Then owned media. So by owned media, we're talking about your websites, the videos that you create, your blog posts, whatever content that you are able to control yourself as a brand or as a business or as a company, whatever it is. So what we can also do now is to create compelling content or engaging content that people can actually relate with. Like we're saying, we're trying to create content for Africans by Africans. So instead of us going online and trying to, for example, let's say use a sound on TikTok that's an international sound, why not just go and use Tens. I'll use Tens as an example. Why not go and use Tens song? On TikTok, take a sound, then we make it go viral. Then people would be interested. Okay, what's this? Okay, it's an African artist. Okay, so now we're pushing the narrative that Africa also has great artists or creators or whatever it is. So creating compelling content and trying to be an expert in your field of content that you're creating, it would also help with our branding as individuals or as businesses. Then another form of media that we could take advantage of is earned media. Earned media is the reviews and the ratings that are on our platforms and things like that. So imagine if I would ask to say, guys, can you please go and give me a rating on my Google business page right now? Imagine 50 people go on the page now and give me 5 stars. The next person is going to go on Google Business and search for, let's say, a digital marketing strategist in Zimbabwe. They're going to find me ranking up there. Then they're going to say, oh, okay, fine, I'll go with Nathan. So imagine if we do that for your page, if we do that for each other's pages. And now I'm doing it for you because I know you're creating content that's really good. And I know you're really good at what you're doing. So I'm going to give you that rating. So if we say, guys, let's do it for each other. 50 people in here, we give each other ratings on our pages, then we all start ranking. And somebody searches for something on Google, then there's 50 Africans that are ranking there. It's good for us. It's something that's going to push our brand and the narrative that we're trying to push forward. So strategies that we can take advantage of right now. One that's off the top of my head, I would say creating more video content. We see how TikTok came in, took over, and we see how the Instagram CEO announced that they're moving from being a picture platform to becoming a video platform. Then we see now Facebook also has Reels that are going in. So if we can also take advantage of that strategy of maybe creating more video content, that will also help push the narrative forward.
Okay. The most common thing, you guys answered 3 different questions, but there's a common thing that you guys keep mentioning, and it's that we need to come together as Zimbabweans, as Africans. See, the thing is, as much as the global village exists, we are only as powerful as we are as a unit. If we're all pulling in the same direction in our different fields, I believe that we can achieve so much more. So now the challenge is, when you try to go at it alone, it takes a lot to build a brand, right? It takes a good digital media strategy, right? You've got a media strategist here. It takes good PR and communications. He's good at what he does, but his communications might not be the best. So if he then says, I know what, I'm just going to do my digital media strategy, and my communications are okay. What that does is it creates a brand that is unbalanced. You lack in some areas. So it's very important that as professionals, as creatives in our different fields, we all come together and we build towards a common goal, which is to say, we want a better narrative for Africa. How do we all contribute towards going there? So, and now this, I'm not gonna specify, you guys can take this in any way. For professionals on a professional level, on a personal level, in terms of digital media and all of this that we're talking about, I want us to talk about particular skills that people can learn that are important to create the right narrative around their businesses, around their brands. What are the skills that they need to tap into to make sure that they can do the best they can in terms of pushing the correct narrative? Practical skills that people can learn and people can use. What are those?
I think from my own experience, so me being a media producer is something that I learned on the job. I had never done it at all at school and stuff. And the biggest strength has been just wanting to learn something. So you're going to have an affinity for knowledge of how to do something from someone or something you admire. and then figure out what it's called, how to do it, and then you jump right into it and just do it. And one of the most powerful platforms that I have been using for that have been forums. So if it's using Adobe, jumping onto forums that focus on Adobe products, and then figuring it out as that goes. Same thing with cameras. Started off with a smartphone camera, learning the manual settings that are there, and then it made it easier to transition to more professional cameras. But then also looking at forums of where people use these cameras, how they use them, what makes sense within whatever budget you have, and then going with that. So it's just, the cool thing about the internet and tech is that it's there to work for you. So there are some things that you can, after you've done it for such a long time, you'll see that, hey, I don't really need to use Photoshop to design stuff all the time. Sometimes I can use other platforms like Canva, which probably can do the job quicker if it's something that doesn't need very complicated graphics. So it's just figuring out how the tools work and then using those tools to your advantage. So just trying.
I think I share the same sentiments, and just to add to what you said, I would advise people to read, because the digital space evolves every second. So if you don't have the culture of reading to enhance your skills, the culture of exploring the digital space, just to learn something new every time, you find yourself stagnant because the digital space is always moving. So yeah, that would be my contribution, and that is a very important thing. I remember when we spoke on Spaces, we did speak about the urge to always want to keep reading. If it's not reading, it's watching. If you know you don't like reading, just watch YouTube videos. If you know you don't like reading, just use your Twitter. It's a microblog. You're not reading a book. At least filter out what you don't want to see and try find things that you want to see. At least every day, try find something new that you've learned about the digital space, about your brand, about your company. Yeah.
I would say the skill I would say would be you should learn to be able to tell a story. Storytelling will help people stay engaged with you. If you're able to tell your story, it means people will relate with you, because people are emotional beings. So if you are able to just tell the story of your brand, tell the story of your business, what you're trying to do and how you're trying to help people, or what you're trying to achieve, people will be able to also engage with you. So if you're able to just learn that skill of being able to tell stories, then it should also help you.
Yeah, and the thing that you mentioned actually about people being emotional beings is why most of these media platforms continue to push the narratives that they push. It's very easy to sell a story about a hungry child that's dying. It's very easy. Everyone wants to hear about that because they want to feel sorry and then feel all these emotions, and it's a human thing that happens. But it's also the same strategy that can be used on the narrative that we want to push, to invoke emotion, to invoke thoughts, to challenge people to feel things when they read our stories, when they read about our business and stuff like that. Tonga mentioned that he walked from Rainbow Towers today in the middle of the night. And that's a point where everyone was like, oh, shame, man. Everyone felt sorry for him. But in that, we paid attention to what he was saying and started to process it more because it evoked emotion in us. So it's a very important thing that you mentioned, and nothing to say. Doing things that invoke the right emotions that we want people to feel, it's very important for our brands, professionally, as businesses, etc. It's very important. And I want you guys to contribute the most to this panel and ask these guys anything you want to know about digital media and everything. So I'm opening this one to you. Any questions, please? Yes. Please, can you get this mic, please?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we media in digital marketing. So my first thing is for the PR guy, right? If we go on Twitter, for example, transport illuminates, right? You can go to there's now a super pirate account, right? That is actually tweeting more than the official super Twitter account, right? And when the super Twitter account tweets, right? They tweet to the whole, to be honest, that no one pays attention to. But what about Twitter were located at so and so and so. But that does not actually attract media attention, they say, by Twitter or on social media applications. I've seen that a lot with a lot of brands, right? They're present on social media, but what they post about or the content they provide is boring content. It doesn't draw people. It doesn't draw people there. I come with my example. I was with Josh who's ZITF. There was the net one and the Econet scan at ZITF. For 3/4 or 90% of what was on the stand for Econet and net one, it was nothing to do with their business. They had a bunch of PlayStation 5s that were there, and people actually playing FIFA. But trust me, the crowd that was drawn to those PlayStation 5s and to whatever the bands that were playing, it was huge. It was overcrowding other stands that were there that were doing strictly business stuff. So it is my suggestion that probably maybe the first point of call is the official communication or official angle for most of these companies for the PR. It should be known. At one of do their actual account. Because I was taking the example from my mom. One Twitter a screenshot yeba Twitter. The suko. Like tweet was is also on the suko. Official communication, but it goes totally on the ground. So I think there should be more presence in the official communication channels. You know, get your account verified. I think there are those options that you can get your account verified. This is the what? This is official end. Because my station my account station. Those who think super 1, 2, 3, guys, is this the actual account? So that's my first one, right? Then to go for the digital marketing in general, right? I think that was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. By Instagram, right? Then I was just going over those reels. Then I bumped into a reel, Chicken In. And the song that was playing there was Chicken In, I Pay Power. But guys, digital marketers, this is the advert that we want to put out there. Chicken In, I Pay Power with Natio and stuff like that. Of course, he's the hottest artist, right? He's a hot song. But I don't think we should turn someone's song into a gym or a chicken, guys. I mean, of course, artists will take it because it's money to them. But I would say good creativity is it maxed out this is now digital marketing. I think we can do better. I think that's the reason why most of our content is not really consumed on social media. Because the honest truth is our adverts are boring. There is no creativity there. You know, as long as can advert there, meet a KPI, but we move on to the next one. There's no creativity there, so there's nothing really for us to consume. That's why we end up going down no consumers, states and stuff like that. Like for me, I watch basketball, and every year I spend about 30 minutes in this one compilation of like the Ranma Footlocker adverts. Those adverts are so raw produced, you actually make time with advertising in this particular item. But in Zim, I can't stand advertising or stuff like that. I mean, so yeah. So to me, it's just my contribution to you guys. We need more creativity there. You know, we need more presence there. Thank you very much.
That was really awesome, bro. So what's actually crazy is you'll actually be shocked that Zoomka probably doesn't have a PR department, a communications department. You'll actually be shocked by how many people in this room actually know what PR and communications is. So this is where we are today, and in Zimbabwe we're trying our best to try and educate people about PR. I won't lie, I'm still learning PR. I'm still very young, but God bless, I'm where I am today. So with that being said, if you have a startup, if you have a brand, you could be an artist, you could be a cricketer, you could be, actually let me use it, a solar company. Try your best, solar, JJ, try your best to get a team that understands business and also understands admin and the technicalities of admin. Try your best to get a PR and a communications team that really knows what they're doing. That's how you probably get Natty O to sing about how to pay the power. It is solar company kind of approach, not chicken. You understand? So that was really great. Thanks, man.
Yeah, just to add on to what you said, I mean, we all have to admit that digital media has changed the way we do everything. I mean, but for business or for those old madaras to admit with mini and each other my old form of marketing, it's an issue. And now to even convince them to say, okay, now we need to get this content creator to come in, and you're paying them $3,000 to create a video, a 5-second video for you to say this. It's a really big issue. But the creativity is there. I mean, you go on TikTok and you look at some TikTok creators, you can see that the creativity is there. I mean, people are very creative, but I don't know, we have to find a way of penetrating these organizations to really make them see the bigger picture. So, like what he said, I mean, we work together. You have doors to go see Dr. Ningi, who might influence this. I talk to him, we go there and we try to see how we can change how we do those things.
Yeah, so I actually resonate with what you're saying, and just to add on to that, the tricky part about it as well, especially with large corporates, is they've been used to traditional ways of advertising. So it's your print media, your radio ads, your TV ads. And the audience that's on those platforms is very different from the audience you'll find on social media. But the templates they work on have not adapted to online social media. So it now becomes work for them to get to create templates and formats that work for social media as well as for social media. And the investment in that is something that probably they might not understand or might not be keen on putting into. So it's a challenge that we then face as the people that receive this communication and this audience, that it's not just about writing an A4-page long press release and just throwing it on social media. You now need to understand the trends and how social media works, to a point where you understand if I'm putting something on TikTok, 10 seconds might be too long, but everything should fit in there and it should make sense. So it goes beyond just pushing out an ad. It is now making sure that it is engaging and it is useful for whoever it is that's going to consume it.
Okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, so another thing, because I was actually just thinking about what you were saying, is if we have our businesses, guys, if we have our brands, if we have our companies, let's be very intentional about what we're doing. Kukia Kia is killing businesses. So especially now, like he said, the old madaras don't really understand what's going on because the templates have changed, times have changed. It's really up to us to change everything. So you might think Kukia Kia knows things, but it does work if you give a digital expert. He knows the loopholes in the digital space. If you give a PR expert, he'll tell you the loopholes in the PR space. But if you're like someone who's doing his business and you want to have a loophole for everything because you can't afford it, it won't work. If you can't afford it, try read, like we had suggested before. Try read and understand, at least get to a certain point where you then can say, I really need a PR practitioner to come and work on this project. I need a digital expert to come and work on this project. Because intentionality is really everything. The end goal matters, and Kukia Kia is killing businesses.
All right. Next question.
So the digital media space is really changing how a lot of people do business, especially for Zimbabweans. These days, you don't even need to hire out a shop. You can literally sell from, the comfort of your house and literally just take pictures and post them on Instagram. You don't have to do things, the old school way, I guess. So in a country like Zimbabwe, where it feels as though you have to be very controversial in order to get attention or to gain momentum with your brand or your business online, how best would you suggest that content creators go about growing their brands, growing their businesses online and in the digital media space? Because it really feels like if you see things like my TT will say something and there will be 11,000 likes, hundreds of comments on something like that, yet there will be another organization that's doing a pad drive for underprivileged girls, and they're trying to grow awareness. They're really intentional about what they're posting. They're about their business, they're letting people know, but it will literally get like maybe 30 likes and very little engagement or interaction. So how do you suggest content creators or businesses online, how do they go about growing their brands and businesses in the digital media space in Zim?
It's a very interesting one, and it's something that I used to talk with some people as well, in terms of try and stratify the audience that you have, because in a lot of cases people just want the numbers, but they are not too keen on understanding the conversions. So it's all about, my TT's video has gotten 11,000 views, but how many of those have been, she does funny stuff, I like funny stuff, I'll watch funny stuff. But it then becomes that whole point of understanding that, you know what, I might get 500 views if 20 of those convert into buying into what it is that I'm talking about. And so that then becomes what you then primarily focus on, stratifying your audience in a manner in which you will achieve whatever goal that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so for businesses, I would say it's really tough. Like what she's saying, it's really tough for businesses. But what you can try to do is work with social media influencers that are aligned with your brand. I mean, it's not like what what Edwin said. I mean, you can't go to any influencer and just pay them for the views, and then they're not niched down to your product. So the whole idea is to try to find social media influencers, and if you could get micro influencers, the better. Because imagine, my TD has 1 million followers, yes, and then she posts whatever she posts, and then out of the 20,000 people watch, only 2 people come to buy from you, and then you compare that to, let's say, I'm trying to sell a health nutrition drink, okay? And then I'm going to this influencer who's been creating content on fitness, and they've got like 3,000 engaged followers. They post my product, and then maybe 100 people engage with that, and then from 100 people that engage, 50 people buy. You see, the return of investment on my end is much better from compared to the other one I've gone on to. So if you, as a small business, we can try to work with social media influencers that are really aligned with what we're trying to push as a brand, as well as also trying to take advantage of user-generated content. So if I'm selling t-shirts that are really nice, and I give Ice a t-shirt, it looks cool, he posts it, and then, I mean, his followers, they like the t-shirt, they're going to ask me where to get a really high quality t-shirt. Then they're going to come back to me, I'm going to take his pictures, I'm going to post them on my social media platforms. Then people would start to say, oh, okay, so Nathan has got these t-shirts, and Ice wears one, Kevin wears one, Edwin has one, you know. So if I'm showing the content that people are creating with my product, and that means people will trust my product more because there's people who have my product out there. So for businesses, social media influencers that are really in line with your business and user-generated content could be the beginning of what you can do to get your brand out there.
Okay, and to add on to what the pros have said, it's really important to know your audience and your market. My TT is actually doing perfect PR for our audience and our market. But if we cross the border and go to America, the market there won't resonate to what my teacher is doing. And she might continue getting 2,000 likes, but her brand will be very relevant to people who understand professional influencership. Then you have a little girl that is posting quotes about girl child and all of that. Her audience might not be seeing it, but the people that are seeing it will help her get her to an end goal. Because even with 30 likes, she can then approach the UN and say, I've been doing this for, oh sorry guys, and patience. Patience is very important. I've been doing this for like a year. My engagement has been very low and I need your assistance. They ask her, what's your end goal? It's maybe to donate things somewhere or to do something. I don't know if you guys have come across pages that have probably 1,000 followers or 2,000 followers, but it's endorsed by the UN. They've done projects with the UN because she's managed to reach out to a target market. So from a PR perspective, this is what I'll just tell you guys, never really look at the other person, but know what your end goal is. Because once you are demoralized by my teacher getting 100,000 views and all of that, but you're getting 30 likes, you won't get any of it. You need to understand your market, you need to understand your end goal.
Alright. Okay, there was a question there. This will take two. So the gentleman in the blue shirt and the guy in the cap. Yeah. Okay.
I want to pose a question to the visual. We see one, like in African country, is into a war, massive war for decades. Out of the bloom, it's now the golden, what we call the golden city or the golden country of Africa. Up to a time that for their own hashtag, that this is one. And in most European countries, if you go on a shop, on a billboard, there's got that visit one hashtag. Looking from Zimbabwe, we, in terms of what I can say, the ghettos and the limitations, we are far better than what Rwanda was. But looking at what Rwanda is at present state, it's so shocking how they managed to transverse from being a country that was known for being in a civil war to the golden city or the golden country of Africa. And also, I don't know how based about the issue of how news is presented to people. I'm sure most people know that the opera news, that thing is full of fake news. You cannot really distinguish really what is happening. But how are we going to bring a picture about how you bring out the correct news to the audience? And
it's Kevin. I know it's Kevin. That's Kevin. I'll take it up like that.
Okay, and also there's this local committee. I'm sure Long John committee. It's Zimbabwe, and when you started these videos, nobody cared about you. But now he's got a segment on Stick Up. I'm sure if anyone is Zimbabwe. But what he does, he tries to bring like people in the US to have a better understanding about the typical African setup, how our upbringing, how we live, and in a more clear picture than one that is being projected of us being in famine, crossing wars. How is people or is Africans, how are we trying to cope and to tell people on the perspective of African. Was when you look at African media, there are two parts. Then you look at the exploration of what you call the Western media. They have got their picture they want to depict about Africa. Then you've got us as Africans. Our media is so poorly presented to people. We don't have the faith to trust local news. We prefer some Papa Ashura, but some we say kind of Al Jazeera, we say BBC news. Yet you've got local channels that depict news.
Okay, let's try and answer that as quickly as possible, Kevin.
Okay, thanks for the question. So, just to get to it, the biggest problem we have in Africa is we have very limited public relation practitioners, and PR practitioners are very important for the relationship between the audience, the newsreader, the journalist, and the source. So, for an example, I'll use Shasha as an example. Last year, Shasha did not release a single song. No song at all last year. But she was always in the media. There was always a story about her on Billboard magazine. She was on Times Square. She was on wherever it is. What was the reason? You have a PR team that's always looking for something to put about you positive in the media. You have Zimbabwe News per se. You have Job Praiser who's released a song. Journalists usually go to Job Praiser to ask him about the song, especially in Zimbabwe. But it should be the other way around. Job Praiser's team or PR team should present the news to the journalists because they need to narrate their story. So with that being said, that needs to be used for the same context as well for the news. To say what's happening with the news in Zimbabwe or in Africa, who is telling the news reporter what to say from the ground. Obviously you go and ask, there's a situation whereby maybe someone got hit by a car, then the source and the journalist have to talk together. But then you have entities like Zima, ZESA, or whichever, or VID. They need to have strong PR teams that protect their brand from journalists. The PR team then goes to journalists and say, okay, we have a story like this, like this, like this. You know, you came to ask us, or you've been told that someone at VID flipped a car and they were trying to do those things. We need to tell you what really happened to shape the narrative and protect the brand. We don't have people that are protecting the African brand, and I guess this is why we're here today. I hope I've answered you correctly.
Yeah, Jonathan, you have something to say about that?
Yeah, so I would want to say that, so if we are to push a certain narrative, it has to be positive. We're looking at it as pushing out a certain narrative about Africa, right? So we're saying whatever narrative that we have to push out as marketers about Africa has to be positive. So it all starts there. You have to have a PR team that shares that positive information or that positive content with the marketing team that then pushes it out. So we cannot be able to push out anything positive if there's nothing positive to talk about.
We'll take the final question.
Okay, my question is specifically directed to Edwin. You come from a business that is mainly about blogging, should I say. So, can you briefly share with us how one who is interested in actually starting their own blog, how they can develop it into a viable product that can bring on attraction and also engagement, at the same time makes sense financially?
Right. That's a difficult one. So, in terms of starting out a blog, again, it is about a clear vision of what you are trying to achieve with that blog. So, an example with So you need to have a clear intent of what you're trying to do with the blog. And there should be some set guiding principles on how you're going to execute that, just so that whatever audience you attract through that idea that you're trying to push out through that blog, you captivate that audience. It doesn't have to be 1 million people. It just has to be the right people that are sharing or resonating with the idea that you have. So, for example, just looking at where I work at TechZim, it's all just about trying to inform the public about stuff about tech, business, and startups, as well as simplifying really complicated stuff so that people, the everyday person, gets to understand what the message is. Because, as the PR guys are saying, PR stuff is complicated to read. And so that's the stuff that we then try and execute to see what makes sense for you, the person who's going to read that. And those are the guiding principles that we then walk with as we do that blog. The hope of that is the audience that we then attract through that is a genuine audience that you can then, that then is sort of like a brand ambassador for your platform. Because now if another person in the street asks them about something that you do on your blog, that's your referral. And from that, you can then further grow your audience. And then if you then push commercially to try and either jump into other avenues that are related to your business, you can then find avenues to monetize. The monetization part is a bit tricky in Zim. It's tricky in the sense that the economy is shaky, and also payment platforms in Zim are they're a bit tricky. So today a change in policy can end up affecting your business if it is based on these payment platforms and the economy of Zim. So it's one of those where you have to ensure that whatever it is you're doing is robust enough to sustain you in a manner that is immune to these changes in policy. And figuring that out, I won't lie, I'm still figuring out as well. But if you are committed to what you do and you make sure that you're honest about what you're doing and you stick to your values, you will always have an audience that can support you.
Alright, thank you guys. I think we're a little bit pressed for time, so we're gonna have to cut this panel short, but I see people still have a lot of things that they want to know, so we'll organize with these chains. I will have them on Twitter, on our Twitter spaces one of these days, and we can talk more about digital marketing and PR and communication. So yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay, and we're just gonna move quickly to our next panel, and we're gonna be talking about running a startup business in the digital economy. So I have a couple of startup founders that I'm going to call to the stage so we can talk about running a business in all of that. So I'm going to call Nomalizo, Buramai, and I'm not sure if Vanessa is here. Yes, please. So if the man come on stage. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys a brief premise for this particular panel. So the last year or two, we've seen a huge increase in the number of startups on the African continent. And this has also corresponded with an increase in funding that is coming into African startups. So you find that, like the first panel said, we just crossed the 2-3 billion mark in terms of investment that is coming into African startups. So we want to talk about, the market as a startup owner, how has that been? So let me just introduce these guys who you guys heard from. Anisum Tasa is the founder of Women About Innovation. She's an innovation specialist. She's worked in a few conferences in Zimbabwe. Nomaliso is the managing director of Fresh in a Box, which is an agri-tech startup. She's got a farm that she runs, and then they sell the produce and all of this. So these are very experienced people in the different fields in terms of running a startup. So the first question I have, I'm going to pose to Anesu as an innovation strategist in all of this. We want to know what are the key things that any startup owner needs to know. Just 3 key things that as a startup owner you need to know and why those are important.
Thank you for that question. So the key things that sometimes that we fail to do as startups is to actually understand the legislation in the environments that we operate in. For example, there was a young gentleman. He had a very robust startup. It was cryptocurrency, and he was the link between the cryptocurrency and the Zimbabwe market. He actually got to a point where he was trading between 1.2 million, and he had an ATM which was vending out US dollars. But he woke up 3 months down the line, and the RBZ had confiscated his machine. But it's all about he didn't know the legislation around this kind of trade. So legislation is very important. And 2, what is your value proposition? Where are you in the value chain? Are you a miner? Are you the one or are you the one that's actually selling the product to the end user? And also, it's also important to figure out, to keep researching what other companies are doing in that same field that you're operating in. Like, for example, I have a friend of mine who's getting into makeup production. So she's strictly on manufacturing, but when you look at global companies like L'Oreal, they've invested into artificial intelligence and facial recognition for makeup matching. So it's little things like that that will actually end up putting you ahead of the curve because you know what's happening in the markets that you're operating in.
Okay. And then while we're there in terms of knowing all these little tidbits, right? And normally, so I'm going to keep this to you. As a startup owner, what have you identified as the drivers of any startup? Like the practical things that will make sure that the rules keep moving forward?
I'd say people, and when I say people, I mean your employees. They probably are the key thing between, for startup owners, I would say they're between you and your money. You know, they either make you money or they lose you money, but either way, they do something within that spectrum, right? So the most practical thing is that if you're going to start a startup, to be honest, I hope that the good doctor would have been here during this time. I asked because at Fresh in a Box we had to quickly learn to have an exhaustive template of what our employee looks like, number one. How we interview them, we don't want to know, tell us about yourself, we don't want to know that. We want to know if you're capable of doing the things that are required here, because most of the people that come out of these institutions don't know anything, you know. So it is important to have that exhaustive framework of what, number one, what your employee looks like, what your employee does, what are their SOPs, and then teach it to them. Like, give them an orientation. Your orientation is not showing them where the toilet is. It's showing them where the money is and how they affect the money. And when they affect the money, how does that affect their money? The moment you do that, you're able to grow the startup and keep the wheels moving. Everything else, you can handle it.
Okay. And for you, Ramai, Melissa has mentioned that identifying the right people, right, is very important. So I know for you, you're a brand that then teaches business how to do some of these things. Identify the right people, identify the right business strategies. What are the things that you'd encourage startups from Zimbabwe especially to do in those regards?
Thank you, and for having me. And I totally agree with but I totally agree with them. And essentially what she said in this feature is culture. You have to know the culture. If you go to Nando's in the UK, it's different from Nando's in Zimbabwe. So they've understood that apart from just the legislature, even the culture within where they want to operate in affects how they do their work. and Melissa talked about, how do you do internal marketing? Sometimes it's not just about hiring people, but how can you get the right people who know where the money is, who know how to prove that? And I think to answer on my part, I think, disruptive innovation. I think there's a lot of assumption that technology was created for Africans, and yet it was scaled out to us Africans. So we need to be able to innovate in such a way that a term is now called based on what we've done, what we've innovated, and how we have seen the success picture of that.
And while we're talking about innovation, as the innovation specialist, what are some of the best innovative strategies that you think are applicable to our current market in Zimbabwe? Because I know that that's where your line of expertise lies. What are the best innovative strategies that any business can use that can help them grow bigger and reach their target market properly?
When you look at our market in Zimbabwe, there are a lot of gaps. And I can't remember which book it was from The Art of War. In the midst of chaos is opportunity. So when you look around you and you see Zuko's not trading, there was a young gentleman who was talking about trying to do a transport startup. How do you pivot on that? And who can help you get to that next stage? Because the venture capitalism laws within Zimbabwe, they're not very big. So right now, startups are trying to pivot off of partnering with the startup community. So how do you put yourself in a position to be noticed by the startup and for your business to end up getting that big check? And it's all about execution, because no startup wants to hear your story about, I've got this going. Where is your proof of concept? When you invest in your own idea, then they're willing to invest in you. So there's a big thrust in Zimbabwe right now about corporates partnering with startups and actually investing equity in most of the startup community. Because you'll see even with like venture capitalism, it's very big in Kenya and very big in Nigeria. Zimbabwe was still a little bit way behind. So that's why you'll see Google and Microsoft. They set up their tech centers in there because they know that the legislation is more favorable to that. And we actually had like a few Zimbabweans move to Kenya and they've managed to achieve Series B funding. So it's about studying where your market can actually thrive. So if you're looking at a population of 13 million in Zimbabwe, and maybe you're offering food services. So will that food services actually thrive in this market, or will it make more sense in another market? Because the world is your oyster. Like technology has made us so connected, but now it's just a matter of doing the work and doing the research about where your company can actually thrive in which market.
Okay, and while we're talking about that, I'd like Melissa to give us a brief idea of how Fresh in a Box came to be and where they're aiming to go, because I think it would help contextualize what Agnes is trying to say here. So please, if you can do that for us.
Okay, so when people speak about innovation, I tend to look at people who think of technology a lot. And the truth of the matter is that innovation is just answering the question, what's standing in between you and your money? So I'm going to always refer to money because when it comes to startups or business, it is about the money. When you talk about investment, it is about the money. So the moment you watch the money, you then know the game. So Fresh in a Box was literally a husband and wife who had tried growing tomatoes, and we were growing tomatoes simply because we thought it was cool, right? Have a greenhouse and do it. It had nothing absolutely to do with wanting to sell the tomatoes. It was a science experiment for me. It was an exercise for my husband who used to work for Spa Zimbabwe. So he thought, we'll just have the tomatoes, put them in Spa, so it's all cool. But it didn't turn out like that, because even if you had that network, we had those kind of struggles. And we leverage on social media simply because you have a personality on social media. People buy people before they buy brands. I don't care how great your product is. If we don't know who you are, we are not buying, right? So you have to be a human being on social media before you tell me what you're selling. Because if it is important to you, I need to know why it's important to you. And if you don't show me who you are, people don't buy you. So Fresh in a Box was built really and truly on the backs of a human being that put themselves out there, right? And then also started saying, but then I'm not the only one. I have this and this other person who's my neighbor, and the other person stays across the road. They all sell vegetables. Okay, let's create something called Fresh in a Box, you know? So the name came way after what the concept was. And everything else that came from the innovation of Fresh in a Box was what's standing in between us and the money. The first thing that we did was to create the platform where we sell, because we started selling off on WhatsApp, and we're like, okay, this is not attainable. Like, I know how to use Excel, but I am not spending the whole day answering WhatsApp messages in Excel. So we created an online platform that had literally 2 buttons between you and yourself. What do you want to buy? A standard box, it costs $15, pay EcoCash, put your number, prompt, and then you pay. That was it, right? It worked for the first 2 weeks when we were just selling one product. Sooner or later we realized, okay, our clients are now saying, but I also want meat, but I also want this, but I also want this. That's how the site grew. Now, from a basic IT perspective and someone who did a bit of computer science, that 150 megabytes page was good enough. Now to create a whole big site that would do certain things, we now needed to bring in people who knew how to do it. And the people that we found were people who were trashing our tech. So everyone who called us out, the first person who did the development of our tech to make it look pretty is a developer called Bagan, right? He just said, your page loads very slowly, it's shit. And we're like, okay, come here for a coffee. And then the next thing, he had built the site, you know? Building the site, now it's no longer about the site, it's about, okay, there's someone on Twitter who said, let's take a new truck, name a cabbage. Now every farmer is doing cabbages. We can't do, or we can't establish the grower scheme. We can't establish our standard box, which is our main product. What do we do? Okay, we need a grower scheme. We're going to get as many farmers and then tell them what to grow. When we tell them what to grow, we tell them that they have a market with us. You know, so all of the innovations that came after, even up to now, the latest innovation of Let's Farm was, yes, we used to tell them what to grow, then you then find out that they don't go and grow because they don't have the money to grow. But I still need to make sure that every one of my customers has a standard box in their house. How do I make sure that happens? I need to find capital for the farmers. I'm not going to finance them using my startup. I have to find ways to finance them, hence the creation of Let's Farm. So every time we see something that is being developed, the innovation is what is standing between you and the dollar sign that is supposed to come into your pocket. When you realize that, you do exactly what is needed. It's a new business unit, it's a new business idea, execute it, because that's where the innovation comes from.
Nice. Okay, so immediately I'm opening this panel to questions from you guys as quickly as we can. Anyone with any question? Right at the back.
Okay. My question is directed in the
to understand, yes.
What do you think is the best way to strategize when you are interested in a certain area? Detailed specific approach, or the general approach where you are like you approach the entire field, then probably time be radical towards a certain thing, or start by radicalizing. You can create me or I should explain this. Or start by radicalizing on a certain specific to only certain strength in that field, so that you can attract customers and later working out.
That's a great question. And what you'll find, it also pivots from what Nomalisa was talking about. Fresh in a Box didn't start off thinking about a grower scheme. It started off thinking about growing tomatoes. I used to sell water. I used to sell water, but then I had gone in with the idea that let me go and sell a bottle of water to TM. But TM wasn't interested in hearing my story because I didn't have the SARS certification, I didn't have all of the documents that were required as a startup. So then I realized, you know what, my market is going to be in my smaller players. So then I ended up striking out a deal with other graphic designers because I knew I didn't have the money to keep paying label origination, that we said, okay, for your money and every other bottle that I sell, then I'll be able to pay you back, and maybe we can do it on a credit basis term. So I started going out to restaurants and clubs and branding all of their water. And before you knew it, the brand grew. I couldn't even keep up anymore. Where I now started hiring teams and everything else. So it just starts from your basic product. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? And you'll find your business will organically grow after you figure out the things that you learn on the job. Because some of the lessons, research is not going to tell you. Some of the lessons will let you know, like, oh wow, this is not going to work. Like, for example, I used to work in the insurance sector as well.
and they had an entire strategy for Africa because we all need insurance. But they went to Nigeria and the product would not sell because they had not invested in being in the market where every car is said covered by the blood of Jesus, so nobody buys insurance. Complete failure. But they didn't know that because they said it works in Kenya, it works in Zimbabwe, it works in Malawi, it works in this place, so surely it should work in Nigeria. It's a big population. But everyone's like, no, don't tell me that, I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. So it's things like that I think the key is to just begin. Just begin, and some of the things will teach you along the way. And you can start to realize this is where the money is. And funny enough, people don't realize that Uber was actually created off of FedEx model. But they just went and they pivoted and wow. So sometimes it's about just begin and the rest will figure it out.
Yeah, can I also take that one? My mic actually does work. And also to agree with what they just said, one of the key things, apart from just beginning, is to understand your value system. You know, if you listen to what Nomalisa said, she talked about those who stay in the neighborhood who are also farming, the farmer scheme, the tech people who come in to work with them. If she just expressed her value system to them, anyone will jump onto that without any question. They will invest in it. Even she said it. You know, when they went to the clubs, everywhere else, it was just her value system that was expressed clearly that allowed her to then get people who can invest, sometimes not investing with money, because we're always thinking, I need an investor who can give me money. But somebody can invest their tech, their knowledge, their intellect. They can invest because they agree with your value system, yeah.
All right, thank you guys. There was a question in the back.
Yes, my question is for anyone who wants to take it. As we know, in Zimbabwe, the major issue is financing. A lot of people have ideas, but getting them off the ground financially is another story. So but I do believe that is possible. So I wanted to ask, from your experience, how can one find strategies for bootstrapping or smart hacks and really cheat codes so that you can actually survive in this harsh economy?
Yeah, well, I have one line. Can everybody please, if you're a startup founder or whatever, you have a business idea, go on to vc4a.com, participate there. There are people who have got a lot of money that want to give you money, and do it. They'll give you money. They'll start off by giving you $500, then they'll give you $1,000, then they'll give you $5,000, then $8,000, and it goes on. But then it requires you to participate on the platform. So please subscribe on VC4A. It's one of the many 10,000. Once from there, you'll know all of it.
So I'm also a bit of a serial entrepreneur. So I'm very passionate about cooking as well. So I had a meal prep business, but I also didn't have any money to start the meal prep business. So I started with my immediate circle where I said, hey, I can do your meals for, I call them my gym junkies. So my gym junkies, I can do your meals, but they were people that I knew. So I started with my immediate circle, and I said, pay a 50% deposit because I already knew my profit margin was like at 40%. So if I get 3 of them and I'm supplying those meals, I'm able to go and buy my produce. I'm able to actually pay off CSR. I'm able to actually get the packaging, and then by the time they pick up the meals, they're giving me the full payment, and that way your business starts to grow and to build up from what you're doing. Because the challenge that I've also seen is, because I've also been part of evaluating a lot of incubation programs within Zimbabwe and outside of Zimbabwe, is that they ask a fundamental question about what have you invested as the founder? So if you can't invest in yourself, why should I invest in you? So think about your immediate circle. And the lovely thing sometimes about talent-based jobs is you can make money before you need money.
Okay. If there's any other questions, we're just going to take 2 more. Going once. Going twice. So to the gentleman in the corner.
All right, thank you. For example, let's say you're looking for funding. How do you predict your idea? So like, do you need to get a patent? And how do you know if they're not going to steal your idea when you project it?
Okay. I'll let these guys answer, right? But I also want to say something regarding that.
Yeah.
Okay. Your ideas, right? Like this, in the book was saying, there's plenty of ideas, right? And when we all think about our ideas, we think they're good, and we think they're the best ever. So we always feel somebody's gonna steal them. But the one thing that I can tell you about serious investors, they don't have time to steal ideas. They have time to invest and let you run your business the way you want to. That's why people, I think you've heard the phrase, people buy people so many times today. Your idea is what gets you in the door. What makes you stay in the room is yourself. The way you speak about it, the way you think about the idea, and the way you're going to execute it. So don't worry about they're going to steal your idea and all of that. Very proper venture capitalists, they have no time to steal all of these ideas. What they have time for is to put money into things that they believe are going to make them money. But you have something to say?
Yeah, and I think just to carry on from him is, don't worry about somebody stealing your idea, because in most cases, people, like you said, they can't steal your idea. If they don't know the vision, if they don't have the passion that you have, they won't be able. Worry about the execution. How can you execute on that idea so that you can achieve what you wanted to achieve? So, yeah, that would be my comment on that one.
Just to add on to what has already been said is, I've worked in corporate where we're asking for ideas, but like Josh said, we don't have time to execute your ideas because you understand what you're trying to bring to life. There's a meme that I once saw that they can duplicate the recipe, but they can't match the sauce. So what's your secret sauce? And a lot of the times patenting isn't cheap, and I wouldn't advise you to run out and do that before it's gotten through the first stage of funding. Because there was even there was a startup that applied to one of the challenges I was a part of, and he had amazing answers up until point 4 about explain your value proposition. His response was, I'm worried you'll steal my idea, I'll explain it at pitch. And that idea was tabled, but he had an opportunity to go and see the light of day and get access to funding.
Well, I can tell you that we are not market leaders in our space because we were the first with the idea. When we started off, there was somebody called Imbari. I don't know where she is now. In the middle of it, there were many other veg delivery companies during COVID. I don't know where they are now. We just do things differently. I don't think that Let's Farm is any different because there was YouFarm, there's a lot of people that are doing the same thing. What you are different at is, number one, your execution and your word to the execution that you know what you're doing. People are not concerned about what the idea is, they're concerned about delivery. Again, between you and your money. If you don't deliver the product that you say you are doing, that is what's going to stand between you and your money. The customer is always ready to buy. The investor is always ready to put money where they know that my money is coming out at the end of that. So ideas are even the gravesite is the richest place with ideas. Everyone's got an idea. Work at it. When you work at it, it sets you apart from the 10,000 that had the same idea. There's now 5 of you that have done work towards it. There'll be 2 of you that are still doing the work at it, and then 1 of you is going to be a market leader.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that was all the questions. You have one more? Yeah. Okay, one more question and we close off this panel.
This is just a quick one. You guys are talking a lot about opportunities like VC or A. Where or how can one position themselves as a founder to quickly identify and take advantage of these opportunities? What do we need to do to be in the right place at the right time?
Just start.
Just start, and also the internet is an amazing resource. Because right now I think there's Africa Business Heroes, which is run by the Alibaba Foundation, and I was fortunate enough to be part of it last year. And funny enough, part of my evaluation, there were probably a 1% application rate from Zimbabwe. But if you look at the number of startups in this room, it was so disheartening. So the internet is your oyster. Look about startup challenges, startup competitions within your areas. They all pop up because a lot of them sometimes have closed calls, and you'll be able to get access to their criteria and their requirements.
I would say after you subscribe, please open your emails before you open Twitter. Or you open any other thing. Your email is the first thing because that's where all the opportunities are. Also, there's another site called Opportunities for NGOs. They also post a lot of stuff. They call for applications. Guys, people with money are lazy to come and look for you. They want you to come look for them, right? So they write things like call for application. Then they write this long thing where they're saying, criteria is that you're 18 years old, yada, yada, yada. They put a long list of stuff. And because if you are just used to reading 280 characters, you don't read through the document. The only thing that document is asking for, give us your name, your surname, your age, your email number, and then what your business is. That's the first step. Then they'll call you into a room like this. Everything else they're gonna give you, participate. That's it. So your email is going to tell you, whether it's from VC4A or it's from Opportunities for NGOs, they're always going to post, there's something about solving a crisis in one of the 17 SDGs. Guys, if you don't know SDGs, go and read them. And just wake up and say, my business covers SDG number 1, 5, 7, and 19. You are in. That's it. The rest of the time, you're just participating. And the more you participate, the more you become better at what it is that your business requires. And you'll find out that most of the things that you are worried about that you won't have come out will be solved by just interacting in those kind of spaces. I cannot emphasize enough, your email address must be the first thing that you go to when you wake up, because those opportunities are there. And when you start with one, participate fully. Where people drop off, like she said, the 1% application rate. Where people drop off is when they ask you, please tell us your value proposition. You'd rather explain with 3,000 words if you don't know what your value proposition is. The truth of the matter is that after like 4 or 5 applications, you would have refined your skill of saying the right language. And I would say, I think I'm now a serial grant applicant. If you want, ask me, I'll help you. Ask me even per Twitter, I'll help you and know how to use your business model canvas. These are like free applications, and I can ask how many of you were given the card by AfriBlocks and they scanned the QR code? See, I scanned the QR code because I was like, QR codes usually have something to win. Maybe I might win a prize, you know? But what I found out is that they've got a data science course for free. I'm a mathematician. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna check this out because I want it. But not only that, it doesn't work like that in my business, but I have a lot of data that I think will be useful to my investors when I present it a certain way. So please, you see a QR code, scan it. I promise you, you will find all of your opportunities. They're lying around everywhere.
And just to close off on what you're saying, Omar, I remember around Easter, Tongai went on the website and they put these little Easter eggs on the AfriBlocks website. So every time you visited the website and you click it, you found an Easter egg. It was an Easter egg hunt. And you're a business owner, you clicked on it, it had discounts on it. And people didn't take advantage of that, right? And which is crazy to me. Like it's a simple, it's right there, you know, and it goes into even the opportunities that are before us. There's plenty of opportunities, like she's saying, especially for Africans on this continent. Guys, there's countless opportunities across so many fields. All you have to do is invest time to look for those opportunities and take a full advantage of them. Apply, guys. Tongai was speaking about it. He sent 600 emails to potential investors. 600 emails. I wouldn't have gone that far. I'm going to be honest with you. There's no way I'm emailing 600 people and get rejected by 550. But that's the way you have to be tenacious like that if you want to achieve things. As a founder, as a startup owner, as a business owner, you have to fight for what you believe is yours. Guys, thank you very much for gracing us with your time. I appreciate it. Get this girl to Tongai so that you can tell us what's next and then we move on. Thank you so much.
So I'm now your enemy because I'm standing between you guys and your food. But you know, great conversations, amazing information, and we gave you all what we call the action cards. And they have, you know, small lines. You can write, you know what, I want to start to learn data science courses. And when you achieve it, that's when you then tick. I want to create a website, I want to create my business, I want to register my business. All of that you can just write on that card. I did like the conversation about the digital space. Us being able to share our narrative and tell people exactly what we stand for. I'm now scared though. I think this was played the whole day. I wanted to show you at the end because it speaks to our new platform. Like I mentioned, we have the platform that we use to get the information to see if the business model works. And now we're launching a new platform, and we thought let's launch it in a different way. And I do hope the creatives and digital marketers in here do see that, you know, we're trying to move away from the ordinary. So we can start from scratch. Start from the one block at a time. In the 9th century AD, a new society was born in the southern region of Africa. A community of farmers, engineers, and artisans finally found suitable land for them to settle and create a new community. These professionals understood that while it was indeed a time to rejoice, it was also time to build. Build homes, build schools, and ultimately build what would become the center of global trade in Southern Africa, Great Zimbabwe. Remnants of Great Zimbabwe still stand today, most notably the Portuguese outer wall, commonly known as the Great Enclosure. How did they build such an enduring world wonder? By shaping and placing one block at a time. In the spirit of those ancestors and many others from across the continent, we're still building. Building better technologies, better infrastructure, and better businesses. One block at a time. We are developers, designers, and engineers. We are freelancers. We are AfriBlocks. So I'm not going, after what you guys did to chicken slices, I'm not going to ask for feedback. But I want to introduce, okay, before that, so feel free to go on afriblocks.com/waitlist because we're inviting people to test our new platform before it goes out. So I think we will start with 100 people that just go in and click every single button, you know, give us feedback before we do our actual launch, which we're targeting for July. So afriblocks.com/waitlist. I'm about to introduce one of our advisors. One thing I mentioned was to build, you need help. And I always see this meme where people say I started my business with 2 grains of rice, all those memes. But I always tell people, get help. You know, all these, what do you call them, motivators, they do tell you something that's vague, like work hard, wake up in the morning. Just tell people exactly what it is, get help. If you see someone who is more experienced than you, because the problem that we might have is young people is we think we know everything. We don't. So the next speaker was about to close off. His name is Freddie Glovo, my mentor, my brother. I've worked with him since at least 2014. And for me, it's easier for me to count the banks that he has not worked for than the ones that he has worked for. My brother, our advisor, Mr. Freddie Lowe.
Thank you, Tongai. It's always difficult to talk in between your lunch, but I'll make sure that I'll be quick. Like Tongai said, my name is Freddie Ndogo. Have worked with Tongai for a couple of years. I think the Get Married project that he mentioned was involved in terms of the application of our business to make sure that we get that right. Issues around legislature. I think as discussed earlier, one speaker highlighted that you need to make sure that you are in tune with your regulation. And it's very important as you actually do your startup business to make sure that you check whether what you're doing is right in terms of legislature. I have worked for a couple of banks, like you mentioned, in Zimbabwe and South Africa. Have been specifically in the payment space. That's the bulk of my experience. But like what the other speaker mentioned, to say that your skills should then also be transferable. Right now I'm currently assigned in the public service at the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe. And as you're aware, there's also some money there to actually be utilized in government. I know that there's a misconception around delayed payments. But indeed, what I'm trying to say is that it's also an area that you can get into if you want to supply to the public service. It's an area that you can get into. My role is to actually do the closing, but there are some notes that I actually took down that I just want to remind you as takeaways. They are my takeaways, but I'm sure you can also get something from that. I think as we started the day, and from yesterday, the talks were around freelancing, being able to work from anywhere. I think there's a speaker yesterday who actually started a company that's called Work Anywhere, and he connected from Portugal. And he told us that it's amazing, it's so good that you can decide when and where to work. You decide when and where to work, so it's up to you. And you can choose to stay in any country. You can choose to stay in a low-cost country, but working for a company that's in a high-cost country. You get the money, but you're using it in a low-cost country. How amazing is that? And then we also learned, I think even as AfriBlocks CEO Tongai mentioned earlier, to say the journey that he walked to actually start up AfriBlocks and how it started. It's amazing. And also lessons around how you can pitch and get funding. And I think the last panel of discussion also spoke about that, with some ideas around how you can get funding. And it was amazing to also hear that you just have got to start. And I think that's a good takeaway. And we all can go out there and just start. And then we figure out as we go. The other takeaway that I actually wrote down here is actually in terms of brand expression. Ensuring that you express your brand and you use technology and innovate. The other takeaway I got here was in terms of the fact that people buy people. I think it was mentioned many times, and I think we need to take note of that to ensure that we learn how we can sell ourselves before we actually sell our product. And then the challenge that we got to say that we need to be thinking about African solutions for African problems. I think that's a takeaway for everyone that we need to take home. Then there was the issue of availability of free training. I think AfriBlocks has got that option. Their partnership with DataCamp is evident. Let's take advantage. Let's go and utilize the opportunity. Then I think from the doctor, who I know we had a couple of questions around the products that are coming out of university. And I think we had a message that actually has been sent. I'm sure it will get to Zimche. But it's a challenge also to us as well, as we interact with the other universities to then say, please help us get products that are a fit to business. Then the other takeaway that I got here was around learning something new every day. We need to actually challenge ourselves and ensure that we try and keep learning and be reading and reading. Then the other takeaway that I got here was in terms of building a team that's the right people for you. You need to identify the right people who can actually align with your strategy and then actually define your business strategy appropriately. And then the other challenge that I want to leave with you as well that I got from the discussion was around the fact that where there is chaos, there is opportunity. And there's a gentleman who asked around the transport space. It's something that we are aware of, and there are challenges that we are aware of, and we need solutions. And there are lots of challenges that we have in the country. So let's go out there and come up with solutions for those. Then the other one that I also wrote down here is in terms of what is between you and the money, because we all want the money. And so I'm told that if you innovate, so between you and money, which we all need money, there lies the innovation, is to further challenge ourselves to go and find solutions and ensure that we then get the dollar at the end of the day. I think that's about it that I had written down. I know there's a lot. I know also that AfriBlocks, they were streaming the virtual event. It's still available. I think we can actually go and consume. Let's continue on the conversations. Let's continue to engage and find assistance wherever. I heard from the panel discussion that the speakers are actually also available to assist us. So that's amazing. They always say that your network is your network. So let's take advantage of this interaction. Let's exchange numbers so that we can further engage post this event. And it all leads me to then thank you all for coming. Thank you for participating. And thank you AfriBlocks team, Tongai and team, for putting this together and getting all these amazing speakers. I must say the whole day we're all absorbing information. I enjoyed the whole event from yesterday up to today. Let's keep that up. Let's continue engaging. And I look forward to Summit 2023. I hope it will actually be much bigger and with more people. Otherwise, kudos to you all. Thank you very much.
Wow, what a day it has been, and I myself have learned a lot. And thank you, Mr. Ndlovu, for the takeaways, for just taking us back and refreshing our minds on what the speakers had shared. And wow, like he said, we cannot wait for Freelancer Summit 2023. And yeah, so we've come to the end of it, and